pledge of allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Remain standing for a moment of silence, please. Thank you. Need to adopt the agenda. Mr. Chairman, the board would bear with me for a minute. I believe under the 19 old business T1, there's 2 items there. One is a letter from Rock Sales. I believe that would be better under correspondence. It'd be more appropriate place for it to be. If there's no other additions or deletions, I would move to adopt the agenda with that change. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I move that we adopt the agenda as recommended in the motion. So, second.
So discussion, Mr. Chairman, we're moving, is that going to be under M2 now for the afternoon meeting?
It's just, yeah, where correspondence is.
I'm confused, I'm sorry. So I had heard a motion, then I thought Ms. Smith had
A second.
separate motion. Or
No,
was it a
second.
second? Okay. Thank you.
Aren't the 2 items related? Shouldn't they be discussed at the same time?
Well, they may be, but we already had a vote on that topic, and it doesn't comply with the vote of this board, so it would be under correspondence, I think, for further consideration.
And where's correspondence on here?
M1. Well, M1, M is correspondence information, it's correspondence. Sometimes I can see that in English if I try to. M is information and correspondence. We already have one there, a memorandum regarding the sign ordinance and the planning commission. This would be M2.
Right now, I'm of the opinion if it's more than T1. It's more where it is right now.
It doesn't comply with the previous vote of this board, previous action.
Right.
I mean, if you want to add the T1, it looks like it would have to be an addendum because it was put on that staff and it doesn't comply with the new change the rules of Chapter 30. An item that's been already voted on. Let's see, I think I have it here.
Sorry.
Now, it would have to be added by a member of the body, and it's been added by a member of the public.
Look, I guess I'll speak up since I caused it to be on the agenda. Our process is that I develop a draft agenda and present that draft agenda to the chair for discussion. At the time I discussed the draft agenda or preliminary agenda with the chair, there was no item for an update on the school connector trail. But I told him that I anticipated there to be correspondence from the Rat Trails group, and then I would get back to them if it indeed came in. And so then I received both the resolution from Ms. Smith and correspondence from the Rat Trails group, and added then to the item as a school connector trail update for further considerations as a combined item. Touched base back with the chair and found that acceptable. So that's how we got to where we are today.
Well, I understand and appreciate that background, but still, under chapter 30, it would have to be added by a member that voted on the original action.
I don't think it's suggesting to change the motion necessarily, but
Now, that's exactly
Refer
what
to
it
the
does.
board.
The letter, the intent of the letter to ask the board to make a earlier action.
I think if there is, and I don't want to have a debate, if there's to be any action taken by the board to reverse the earlier action, then that action would have to be put forward by somebody in the majority of the first time that it's changing their vote.
But I understand, but that's the intent of the letter, so the letter should either be under correspondence or one of the supervisors that acted on the previous issue would have to add it to the agenda, which is not what's happening. I'm just trying to be
If we
consistent.
disagree, and that's okay.
I'm just trying to be consistent, and this is, I believe, consistent with our rules of the agenda, so that if it's going to be added, it could be certainly added right now by one of the members, but I would see it as an addendum item, because it wasn't added by a supervisor when it was, when the draft was compiled.
It was acknowledged by Supervisor Welch and his duty to preview the agenda before it's published.
I know, but he was looking at something that was already added, am I correct, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
So you didn't ask it to be added?
Board members don't ask for most of these things to be added, that's my
I
judgment.
understand, but this was an action item that had already been acted on by this board, and it didn't comply. This letter doesn't comply with the previous action, so it's actually asking for us to rescind that action, which makes it an action item. And since we haven't had that discussion, it would either be under correspondence, or it would be added by one of the supervisors in the draft. And you're telling me it didn't happen. Am I correct?
I said what I said, I'm not sure what you just said, but I'm happy to proceed however the board wants and votes.
Well, I'm just trying to be consistent, Mr. Chairman. I think we either have to have it under correspondence and discuss it then if we want to, or it would be an addendum item for the night meeting, where it sits now, but it would be an addendum item, because then one of these supervisors would be asking for it to be placed on the agenda in the proper manner.
Well, I think up until now, it's correspondence, as far as,
It's correspondence, so it's in the wrong position.
well, there's probably a couple of places we could have put it, but where it was, it's fine. Or where it is.
But it's correspondence action, asking for action by this board, not in compliance with an earlier action. And that's why under chapter 30, it would have to have been placed on here by one of the supervisors that voted in the earlier action, in the majority. That's the way the rules are, and that's what you and I discussed when we put those rules together, and this board adopted them. So to comply with the rules and be consistent with them, I think that we only have the two choices. We either place it under correspondence, or we make it an addendum item, and one of the supervisors has to ask for it to be there. It's very simple. It's just a housekeeping thing.
Well, who's the pleasure of the board?
Well, you have a motion and a second, Mr. Chairman.
Right. Want to call the question?
I guess so.
Pardon?
I guess so, yes, sir.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay.
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 Mr. Chairman, move to adopt the agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion made and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay.
Nay.
So we're,
Motion
just
carried.
let me be clear, Mr. Chairman, point of order, we're not going to follow our own rules of procedure, not to adopt them. That's what this vote just was. Is all I did was point out a procedural question.
I thought we claimed correspondence, Fraser.
No, you voted to leave it as proposed on the night meeting. It's not correspondence.
So I think if, in order for action to be taken to reverse the earlier action, you're absolutely right, Chapter 30 would require one of those who previously voted in the majority to
I
make that
understand,
action.
but it's placed now on the agenda as an action item and it's correspondence.
And in order for action to occur, one must pass the Chapter 30 test. If it doesn't, then action cannot occur.
Well, it's obvious that there's 5 of us here and it was a 4-to-1 vote, and one of those could possibly do that.
Right.
Mr. Curry, I appreciate that you're always willing to help clarify things, but I would have liked to have heard what the chairman had to say. Because I think you started to say something about what you intended to do.
Well, I hadn't really planned on saying any more, but I'm ready to go on to the next item.
I guess I'm unclear, and if I'm unclear, then I imagine the citizens are unclear as well. Did you intend for it to be a matter of correspondence?
Yes.
Well, then I would move that we revisit that vote, Mr. Chairman.
Seems like to me that vote was 3-2.
Yes, sir. Well, then would you like to revisit the vote?
I think we'll get to it tonight.
We can't, because correspondence is before the night meeting. It's a procedural thing. It looks like where this board
I
is
don't
unclear.
really
It's
see
all
what you're
procedure.
saying, Mr. Fraser. You're saying like 2 things at once here.
No, I'm not, sir. My motion was to put that letter under correspondence, and you're telling me after the vote that you agree with me, you thought that's what you voted on, but that's not the way the vote came out. If it's correspondence, you would have to ask to revisit the vote, sir.
Well, I didn't think we need to revisit.
Well, we have to, because you just voted to adopt the budget as presented. I mean, not the budget, I'm sorry, the agenda.
And therefore, we should move to the next item, Mr. Chairman.
That's what I thought.
But I'm
Okay,
saying,
Mr. Fraser, can we move to the next item?
so we're going to ignore our rules of procedure, sir.
No, I don't think so, Mr. Fraser. We're going to discuss that tonight under correspondence.
Correspondence will be in the afternoon meeting, sir,
According to the agenda.
according to the agenda. Unless you move correspondence out of the sequence, and we have to do that now when we adopt the agenda.
Well, go ahead and make the motion, Mr. Fraser.
Well, since it was a 3-2 vote, sir, you'd have to make it, or one of the other members that was in the majority of the last vote.
Well, then that takes us to the next item on the agenda.
Well, point of order, Mr. Chairman. We are going to ignore our rules of procedure.
That's what I thought we just avoided.
No, sir, we haven't answered the question. We have to do one or
Which
the other.
program, Mr. Fraser? I don't understand here. Why can't we go to the next item? Because you're the only one dissatisfied with having the line item as being correspondence or not.
Well, that's what it really is. It's correspondence. And it would either have to be under correspondence or
I guess
properly.
I missed something somewhere because I thought we approved it as correspondence.
We did not. That's what I asked you if you wanted to revisit your vote, and these members are wanting to go forward, but you're saying that you voted for the other. But that's not the way the vote is happening. Mr. Curry, if he would weigh in on at least that part of it.
I can hand you a copy of Chapter 30 and you can tell me which section we're not following. So I'm not sure I understand you.
Under motions. Motions 30-4C, motions to reconsider items that have failed, or rather, this would be D. Motions to reconsider items that have passed may be made by any member that voted to pass the item at the time passed. Any member may second. You're adding it to an agenda as an action item.
There was no earlier motion on adopting.
The earlier motion was at a previous meeting.
But this motion.
This doesn't specify. It doesn't specify at that particular meeting or any subsequent meeting. This is a subsequent meeting.
This motion.
This is a subsequent meeting. 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 This is whether it was a continued meeting or a new meeting, it's the same item. We're revisiting it. And that was our intention when we worked on the rules, that because years before, we had proceeded like that, but we just didn't have it in writing, that if you didn't have something spelled out, one member could keep bringing the same item before this board, meeting after meeting, and there had to be some sort of rules to protect the board from that. And that's what this is. It would have to be brought back forward. I may vote for every bit of this. I may not, but the problem is I see this as a procedural error that we need to correct, and we should correct it right now. That's all I'm saying. I don't think there's anything nefarious here or that anybody did anything intentionally wrong, but I think it's wrong, and I think that we need to correct it. And that's why I brought it forward. And I would do this forward if I was asking the board to do something that it was a 5-1 vote earlier. Or 5-0 rather. Simply housekeeping. For the sake of argument, would one of you gentlemen just make that motion?
I think there's I think, Mr. Chairman, there may be a misunderstanding. Is you feel, I don't want to speak for you, but you feel that this is correspondence within this subject tonight, which is M1, I'm not looking at it here, whereas the treasurer wants to move it under the title called correspondence. I think that's where the disconnect is on the word correspondence.
And that's where it belongs, because we have a section on the agenda for correspondence.
My sense,
What is the difficulty with having it under correspondence?
well, the reason I voted it down was because I thought this particular letter from Rap Trails and the memo from Rap Trails is probably best considered in the context of the Rap Trails discussion and the resolution that's on the table. So that it can be all looked at in one place, and it would be less confusing to the public if they had an opportunity, if they followed on board docs or on any of these screens, to be able to see all of the information in one place.
We could refer back to this. We could refer back to correspondence that was received.
And it's on the agenda prior to it, it's not on the agenda after it.
I just,
It's a housekeeping thing.
well, it just
Tonight.
seems a minor matter, if any. If a matter at all.
I think it's housekeeping. I think we're setting the rules, we ought to follow them. We've got a group of people that want this board to follow its procedures. There's people out there in the community that are taking sides on whether we do things improper or proper, and I think this is just a housekeeping thing that we're trying to do it properly.
But I'm a believer that I don't think that it's necessarily misplaced.
Let's move on.
I'd like to move on. I can't see where we're gaining anything, but I thought we were voting on correspondence. Why was it that we did?
Because you didn't, sir. It would have to be under correspondence. You voted for it to be on an agenda item.
Which motion? The second motion was to adopt the agenda as presented. The first motion was to adopt the agenda with the Rap Trails letter moved to a new agenda item M2 under correspondence. That original motion failed 2-3. The second motion to adopt as presented passed 3-2.
No, I'm confused. I don't know. Say that again.
The initial motion that was placed on the table by Mr. Frazier, second by Ms. Smith, was to adopt the agenda with the letter that is currently in the evening agenda item under 2.1 from rat trails to pull it out of T.1 and insert it into a new agenda item, M.2, which is under correspondence. That failed. The second motion was to adopt the agenda as presented in the packet, which passed.
The problem would be that so many of the public intend to come tonight because they've been informed that tonight is when this discussion is going to take place. And to bypass that and have it this afternoon would exclude them from the possibility of participating.
It doesn't exclude anybody, sir.
Well, if we discuss it this afternoon, then they're not here. They plan on showing up tonight.
It could always be referred back to. It's on the agenda, but it's in the proper place. I don't know why this is so difficult. It's just a housekeeping thing. It's communication from rat trails to this board, and it should be under correspondence. And we could always, since it's going to be looked at earlier by the board, it could always be referred back to at that particular time. It doesn't take it off the agenda, Mr. Perry. It just puts it in its proper place on the agenda. There's nothing that says we can't look at it later. There's nothing that says that it can't be read in its entirety later. I'm just trying to make this a housekeeping matter. And the reason I'm a stickler for it is because there's people out there on both sides of every issue that think the bottom line is that the board ought to follow its procedures. And I think that's a good thing. It can always be brought back up at that particular time. It's already on the agenda. It's not being subtracted from the agenda. I didn't make that motion.
Mr. Curry, if I'm not mistaken, we receive correspondence on issues on the agenda from citizens or from groups all the time. This is not a unique
And it's
place under
always
this
under
correspondence.
correspondence, is it not, sir?
I don't know.
No,
I don't believe it is. I believe it's paired with the.
Many
with that
issues,
on the agenda.
they're intended to inform your decision-making process. Whether in this particular case under T1, there's a resolution for consideration, and those letters may inform the decision-making process of the board. I don't know. I think Mr. Frazier has a point that if you were to someone were to make a motion that is opposite to the motion that was passed the last time we were at the high school, then it may need to be made by somebody who is in majority based on the Chapter 30 requirements.
Well, that definitely would have to be.
It depends on what the nature of the motion is and the nature of the actual motion that was made last time.
The motion is tabled with direction for this group to do a certain thing, and there's nothing in the correspondence that pertains to them complying with the board's requirement. But case in point, if this was a rezoning situation, and we said that they had to get bonding as part of the approval, and they wrote us a letter saying that they're not going to get bonding if they want to explore some other avenue, that probably would go under correspondence and not have a separate action item on the agenda to try and reverse an earlier decision. It would be a letter stating what their determination was, to comply or not comply. And that's all this is. It's a letter, it's correspondence, with their intent to comply with an earlier vote of this board. And I don't know why that's so difficult for us to get our hands. And it would be under correspondence, and it could be referred back to by members of this board at a later point in the meeting.
I just think that would be more confusing than it needs to be.
It's not confusing. It's part of the process. We're part of the deliberative process here, but we're not.
So,
Mr. Chairman, I think you could just simply change your vote if you wanted to. Or we move on.
will they get us to the next point?
That would, sir, I think so.
I'll change my vote.
And I think to do that, you have to put a motion on the floor to reconsider the agenda that was originally presented by Mr. Frazier, which is to adopt the agenda as amended to move the letter to M2.
Correct. I would
I would second that.
all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
Okay. Approve the minutes. Mr. Kirk.
Yes, sir. You have 3 sets of minutes on your agenda for approval. September 5th, 2018, October 1st, 2018, then October 22nd, 2018. I'd be happy to take any comments you have on corrections, and then they're ready for approval.
That's 2 regular meetings plus a special meeting. Am I correct?
Yes, sir. Now, Mr. Lozinski already pointed out to me a typo on page 13 of the September 5th meeting minutes, where the word interrupt was used instead of interpret.
Which minute for us?
September 5th.
I had a change to that set of minutes as well. Under the VDOT report, it was referred to as Woodward Avenue. It's Woodward Road.
What page is that?
It was under the VDOT
Didn't catch that one.
VDOT report. Although Woodward Avenue has a nice ring to it, it is Woodward Road.
So with the corrections of those typos, I would make a motion that we adopt all 3 sets of minutes.
Oh, on the 1018 minutes, I had a change as well.
Okay.
In the portion where we're discussing the letter to Mr. Connick, it said I had a moment of self-reflection. I had a moment of reflection regarding an individual that I nominated to serve on a committee. It was not a reflection involving myself.
What page number?
Again, I don't have that noted, but it's in that.
Right? Oh,
It's in that discussion. It specifically says self-reflection, and it was not self-reflection, it was reflection on another individual.
Who has a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion with corrections to we adopt all 3 sets of minutes.
I second.
Motion made and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Minutes approved. Public comment. Anyone wishing or desiring to speak will have the opportunity to do so. Please raise your hand to be recognized. State your name and the district that you're from. And direct your comments to the board. I think that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We open public comment. And you're first, Bob.
All right. Good afternoon. My name is Bob Hurley, and I live in the Hampton District. I'm a resident of the Hampton District. And I'm here on behalf of the United Citizens of Rappahannock County to express strong support for the draft code of ethics that was referred to the Rules Committee last month. By way of background, United Citizens of Rappahannock, and we call it UCOR for short, is a citizen group whose mission is to support civility, rational discourse, and sound decision-making in the government and politics of Rappahannock County. We're a nonpartisan group, and we seek members from diverse backgrounds who are interested in the county's governmental processes and who share our goals. Just over a week ago, we held our first membership meeting with over 100 interested citizens in attendance. We're off to a good start and look forward to working with the county government at all levels. Stewardship of the public trust not only requires allegiance to the law, but it should also obligate county officials and employees to act in ways consistent with the highest standards of ethical conduct. Citizens and taxpayers should deserve nothing less from their local officials. In keeping with Rappahannock County's commitment to excellence, we believe adoption of a code of ethics will engender civility, transparency, and integrity. The set of clear ethical guidelines will establish a level playing field for all officials and employees, and perhaps most importantly, will be understandable to members of the community. The code of ethics can also be a useful tool in eliminating ethical confusion and misunderstandings, providing a concrete framework for acceptable conduct. In addition to the Board of Supervisors, we ask that this draft set of standards be applicable to all boards, commissions, authorities, and constitutional officers and offices in the county. In short, any individual who serves the citizens and taxpayers of this county in a governmental capacity. Adopting a code of ethics is not a new or novel practice. In fact, many counties in Virginia, as well as counties across the country, have adopted codes of ethics. The National Association of Counties, the group that represents the nation's 3,000 plus counties, states, quote, by having a tangible code that establishes standards of conduct based on duties and virtues and establishes parameters for behavior, officials are forced to be accountable for their actions, end quote. The proposal before you can go a long way in ensuring that Rappahannock County officials and employees will comply with both the letter and the spirit of the law. That public officials be impartial and fair in their judgment and actions, and that the public office be used for the public good. That public deliberations and processes be conducted openly and in an atmosphere of respect and civility. And when necessary, that sanctions be applied should someone violate the code. We ask that the Rules Committee promptly complete its consideration of the draft code of ethics, and if it does not, that the full Board of Supervisors take up and adopt this measure at its December meeting. Finally, our group, UCOR, recently circulated a petition encouraging the Board of Supervisors to adopt ethical standards for all Rappahannock County officials. Thus far, we have about 80 signatures of support, and we'll be seeking additional signatures in the days and weeks ahead. Soon we'll be submitting this petition to each member of the board. In sum, we are pleased you're considering this important proposal, and we urge you to conclude your deliberations in the next several weeks and move to adopt it at your December meeting. Thank you.
My name is Wayne Dixon, and I have a few comments to recapitulate and give a little more emphasis to my colleague who just spoke. We are board members of the new UCOR organization. My name is Wayne Dixon. I'm a resident of the Stonewall Hawthorne District, and as I've said, I'm a member of the Board of Directors of United Citizens of Rappahannock. My colleague Bob has done an outstanding job of emphasizing why we came together. UCOR exists with strong bipartisan, non-political support that shows that a good many of us want to see common decency and civil discourse return to the public life here in Rappahannock County. Long overdue. UCOR's action agenda is to support civility, transparency, and excellence in the entirety of our county government. And our number one agenda is the establishment of a code of conduct and/or a code of behavior that shall apply to all who serve in capacity with our county government. Our organization took the first step in submitting a suggested code of conduct to the Rules Committee based on similar codes in many other counties in this Commonwealth. Ultimately, the establishment of a code of conduct rests with this body. We can find no reason for Rappahannock County not to have such a code, and we will call on you today and continuing for a clear, concise code of conduct without delay. Thank you.
Wakefield District, my name is Mr. Young. I'm not going to be able to meet tonight with you later, so I'm going to speak to the issue on number 10. The Board of Supervisors passed a resolution clearly defining what Rat Trails needed to submit for the Board of Supervisors to proceed in any way on the proposed bike trail project. A project which, from strong citizen opposition expressed at earlier sessions, clearly lacks overwhelming community support, and it requires all the county taxpayers to be encumbered. That isn't going to change. The Rat Trails group has rejected that diktat being created in that resolution. It seems pretty clear that the issue is dead, not simply old business which is open to ongoing modifications. Their proposal is not one which was initiated by any citizen consensus project at any time, and I'm opposed to the Board of Supervisors directing our county administrator to spend further time and effort by working with Rat Trails, Bowler Engineering, and others to identify and develop additional scenarios for funding and executing the School Connector Trail project as they have requested. There are way too many seriously needed things that haven't gotten and aren't getting done. The lack of focus and follow-through, among other reasons, which I believe Mr. Curry's time would be far better directed towards dedicated to and will provide much greater benefit, truly, for all of us. Despite assertions to the contrary, the bike project does not broadly serve and benefit all of the county's citizens. It does not serve me. And from my conversations with others, many of them as well, I'm urging you to pass the resolution submitted by Supervisor Smith and to immediately follow through. It's far and away time to put all of this past us. Thank you.
Anyone else care to speak? Yes.
Good afternoon. I'm Sheila Bressinger, Hampton District. I made some notes because I wasn't here last month for the Board of Supervisors meeting, and I wanted to comment on what was the letter of reprimand for Mr. Connick. It did not come about as a top-down decision from the Board of Supervisors, as apparently some people spoke about last month. They asserted in there, please remember that quite a few Rappahannock residents, along with Chris Green, who lived here and still works for the Rap News, addressed the Board of Supervisors a while ago, stating that various behaviors, use of foul language toward them, where they felt unacceptable for a county representative, whether paid or appointed. These were not random, but a pattern of erratic behavior over several years. Mr. Connick has been sanctioned by our courts several times. He flaunts rules, the most recent being at the 7 p.m. Board of Supervisors meeting at the high school recently. The principal had asked that attendees abide by the same conduct required of the students, taking their turn, no one speaking out of turn. Mr. Connick, after his regular turn, just decided to stand in the back of the auditorium and blatantly shouted an untruth to the back, to everyone who was there. And that's a lawyer's trick of using misinformation to that point, which had to be explained later. In discussing these issues, the board found that they had no way to hold a person accountable because they lacked a code of conduct. Several people at that meeting spoke of the need for a specific code and addressed the situation like that. All of this contributed to the reprimand in the code of conduct. I am not disparaging others' comments as to how Mr. Connick has helped them. I've heard that he's helped move snow from driveways and other good actions. That's fine. However, I stand by my prior comments on this issue. I do not think that Mr. Connick is in any way a role model for our county government, and I support the letter of reprimand and instituting a code of conduct so people can be held responsible.
Pete Deacons from Hampton District. May not make it to the 7 o'clock meeting, but I want to voice again in public my opposition to the Rapp Trails connecting trail, and I strongly urge you to support the resolution presented by Ms. Smith. Thank you.
James Mills, Stonewall District. I'm all for the trail, if it's letter of credit. Provide. That's the only guarantee that our money, tax money, will not be spent on this trail. In the September 5th meeting, I thought it was a fair, honest shot, when you passed the requirement for the letter of credit. There are a few people in this county that probably benefit from the trail, but the majority of them nobody probably even see it. If they want the trail done, put the letter of credit up. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Susan McNally. I live in Wakefield District, and I've been a resident of Benton Road for 29 years. And I just have one question. When can the residents expect a response to our October 14th letter to the board? That would be great if you could tell us that. And I also want to say there was an accident on our road 2 days ago. I think it was a speed situation. The car was on, it flipped. It was just one car, and it was resting on its roof. So the language that we talked about in the road being dangerous and people driving too fast is not fiction. Thanks.
Anyone else care to speak? Anyone else care to speak? Declare public comment closed. Next item. Dr. Branson. Is that at school?
Good afternoon from your friends in Pantherland. There's a lot going on, and I'll try to keep this brief. But first up, congratulations to our drama troupe and director Russell Paulette and assistant director Mike Myers, who placed first place in the VHSL regional sectional competition. This means that they will continue to the next level at West Point High School on Saturday, November 10th. We have one of those drama troupe students right here, Grant Purdue over here, filling in internships that he two students in that play received honors. Sophia Hernandez and Grace Rayford were both given the accolade of Outstanding Performer. If you attended the 14th Annual Fall Art Tour sponsored by RAC this weekend, then you saw the collaborative art projects from both the high school and the elementary school, as well as the stunning guitar projects completed by our gifted program art students. We are so proud of the students for all they have accomplished, and they were just delighted to have those on display for everybody to see. Our varsity volleyball girls successfully defeated Stonewall last week to clinch the regional tournament contest and advance to the next level against Alta Vista tonight at 6 p.m. So we hope that you'll come out and support our girls and Coach Atkins and the Lady Panthers. Our cheer team finished third in the 1A regional sectional at Windsor High School on Saturday, October 27th, which concluded their competition cheer season. So congratulations to those girls and Coach Gwen Burley. All of our 7th graders, along with nearly 3,000 other 7th graders from across the region, attended the annual Worlds of Work Career Expo. If you recall, this was the expo created several years ago by CTE directors in 7 different school districts in partnership with Barrett Machine, Frederick County EDA, and Northern Shenandoah Valley Regional Commission in order to help middle school students create an academic career plan directly aligned to potential career clusters of interest. Students move through the expo and experience hands-on activities that are designed by those in the field or the industry to help them experience and explore different career fields. This year's career fields that were explored at the expo that takes place at the Body Renew Center in Winchester that's still the site, were agriculture, communications, construction, finance, health science, hospitality and tourism, information technology, manufacturing, public service, transportation, and logistics. After the expo, students return with a manual and a pamphlet about each career field and the amounts of money that they can make, and then they have to align their academic career plan with courses in high school, as well as 2 years post-secondary that will help them achieve that. So we're very excited that it's still going on, me especially since I was one of the career tech directors that helped get that going. So we're pleased to see it's still growing every year. Last Friday, you may have seen that the school board allowed a student day to be changed into a professional development day for required staff training. That staff training were in the areas of Title IX, FERPA, Title III, harassment grievance procedures, and CPR first aid for those who are required to have it this year for licensure. Through a partnership with Rappahannock, they're helping us out to get our teachers all certified. They need that for licensure requirements. And then some staff were able to participate and attend breakout sessions, some that were led by their peers. Examples of this were Google for Educators, Instructional Technology, Neuronasium and Action-Based Learning, Kindergarten Assessment Training, Student Conferencing, and Restorative Justice. The Rap Tomorrow, Read Today program hosted a storyteller at the Rap Park on October 27th. This program is a collaboration between RCPS, Headwaters, and the library. And it's an early childhood education outreach effort to encourage parents of children younger than 5 to begin the reading process and develop early literacy skills from home. So as part of that project, we send newsletters, readers, books, and we hold events to support the families. Currently, since we started the program this past year, we have 40 children in the program. So very excited about that. We hope that you will join us for our annual Veterans Day Assembly, Monday, November 12th at 10 a.m. at the high school, where we will again be honoring our veterans from all branches of the military. And of course, our band will give a performance as well. And the band did send me something just now. Make sure I hit that. Sorry, Crystal. The Marching Panther Band, which consists of 32 students, grades 8 through 12, with over 50% this year, 8th grade students. Competed in 4 competitions this season, in addition to performing at every home football game. The Panther Band competed at the Battle on the Blue Ridge at Millbrook High School, at Emerald Classic at Riverbend High School, and the Hot Rod Classic hosted by C.D. Hilton High School, where they earned 3rd place and Best Drum Major and 1st place, respectively, against groups consisting of 9 through 12 only. You can imagine the caliber of our band right now, it's incredible. The Marching Panther Band concluded their season last week with a final performance at the Virginia Band and Orchestra Directors Association Marching Band on October 27th at Massaponax High, where they earned a rating of excellent. Immediately after the conclusion of Marching Band, the Panther Band has been scurrying to transition to Concert Band, which will have their first performance of the year Monday, November 12th at the Veterans Day ceremony. Concert and jazz ensembles will perform a winter concert on December 13th at 6 p.m. in the high school. So we hope that you'll continue to support the band. Thank you, Director Jason Gira, for sending that over right in the nick of time. And finally, the alternative program, the Head Start, taking place at CCLC, which you generously funded, has been going really great. The program, now known as First Step, now has 23 students enrolled thanks to some additional support from Headwaters Foundation. They help support 3 more students getting into that program. We're so thankful for that support. Currently, we are working diligently on a massive grant project by the Virginia Early Childhood Foundation. This program would keep this going for another 2 years while we work to leverage additional Head Start and Early Head Start funding. It'll bring in $250,000 for this program and this outreach. It was interesting and timely. I was at the VAST conference a couple weeks ago, and the newest research that is the governor's pushing down in General Assembly and educational institutions are that we know there's a lot of disparity in student achievement with socioeconomic gaps. We've known that for a while, but what they found is the growth rate is consistent across groups despite those inequities. So the new wave of thinking is to explore private partnerships, private-public partnerships to invest in early childhood, because the idea being if you level the playing field by the time they hit kindergarten, growth rate takes over from there. So we're hoping that these investments go well, and this grant project is a way for the program to study that. So if we get it, it would allow us to leverage resources from a multitude of agencies, streamline processes with a single entry point intake, raise quality standards, and offer assistance to other early childhood care centers in our county to become eligible for subsidies and placement of at-risk students, provide targeted training and incentives for professional development of early childhood teachers, and more. So far, in the past couple of weeks, we've been very busy trying to knock down the doors of everyone who will listen to us to help us with this project, and we have a lot of agencies partnering with us already. Of those are the Rappahannock DSS, Fauquier Mental Health Foundation, PATH Foundation, Rappahannock Community Services, Smart Beginnings, Valley Health, Lord Fairfax Community College, and Northern Piedmont Community Foundation. So we are asking the board for a letter of support for this application, which is due this week. Very excited to have it done, but thank you for all you've done to support this, and we hope to get that in, I believe it's Friday the 9th at 11:59 p.m. Countdown's on. We worked on it all weekend, so hopefully we can get it on. But thank you for all you do to support our youth. We couldn't do it for you without you. Do you have any questions?
When did you say the band concert was?
The concert will be December 13th at 6 p.m. And that'll be at the high school auditorium.
Plus they'll do the Veterans Day.
Yes, the Veterans Day on Monday at 10 a.m. Please come.
Dr. Grimsley, I'm sorry, could you please reread the list of things, not the entities that you're working with, but the list of things that the mixed delivery preschool grant will enable us to do a second list?
Sure, yes ma'am, I'd be happy to. It encourages you to leverage resources from multitudes of agencies, streamline processes with single entry point intake, so a single application no matter where you apply for the program, so it's unified that way. It raises quality standards, the Virginia quality standards for early childhood education, so we've sent letters to all of our child care centers in Rappahannock to be a part of this grant project as well, and if they choose to come on board, then they get some professional development and coaching and curriculum resources and things to help get to the level 3 quality standard they need to be able to be eligible to receive subsidies for those students. We provide targeted training and incentives for professional development of early childhood teachers. There are not a lot of requirements for teachers of early childhood education, so this will provide incentives, and that's where Lord Fairfax is coming in to help us with those two, to offer them to our teachers. Let's see. And there are more things too, like connecting parents, parental outreach that will be part of this, wraparound services, mental health services, drug abuse support, things like that we'll be working with the Department of Social Services for. So it is a monster bear of a grant, I will tell you. There were up to 50 pages last week, and I had to condense it quite a bit for character limits that drive me a little crazy, but that's okay.
Will you be here for that agenda item?
For,
And the attendance at this meeting?
I would like to be, yes. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Next item, Mr. Kaczynski.
I'm going to give a brief introduction. In an earlier meeting, Mr. Nesbitt presented his quarterly report to the board, and Mr. Frazier requested additional information on the revenue sharing program. And Mr. Nesbitt, Mr. Banks are here to provide that information.
Thank you, Chairman Welch and board members. I appreciate the opportunity to come today and provide some information on the revenue sharing program. I brought Greg Banks, who I think some of y'all remember. Greg is a Rappahannock County citizen, as well as he's our programming director for VDOT for our Culpeper district. And he's the one that knows where all the money is. And he helps keep track of everything, and he knows the revenue sharing program well. And so I asked him to actually present the update on the revenue sharing program. Appreciate it, Greg.
Good afternoon. I'll speak briefly with you here on the revenue sharing program. I have a few slides here that I'll go over. Revenue sharing program is a state funded program. Provides a cash match on a one-to-one basis for localities to address construction, reconstruction, improvement or maintenance projects on highway systems benefiting the general traveling public within a locality across the Commonwealth. It is a dollar-for-dollar match. It's, so if the locality puts up $1 million, then the state will match it with $1 million. Again, it's state funded, it's not federally funded. There is an application process. And it is capped at how much an applicant can be in the application. The program allocation is up to $100 million per year. The General Assembly allows it to be funded up to $100 million a year. This last cycle was at $100 million. The application process is on a biennial cycle. We received applications last year. No applications will be received this year. In 2019, they will be received again. We were fortunate last year to have $100 million at our disposal in last fiscal year as well as this upcoming fiscal year. There is a cap in terms of how much a locality can apply for in a given fiscal year, and that is $5 million. So a locality can put up $5 million for a $5 million match, and again, since it's a biennial cycle, $10 million. And it's also capped in terms of how expensive a project can be. A locality can only receive up to $10 million per project. So if a project costs $100 million, the locality puts up 10, of course $5 million per fiscal year, and they receive $10 million in state matching funds. There's $20 million, and the locality would be responsible for the additional $80 million, or at least would have to apply for another avenue other than revenue sharing at that point. It would be tapped out in terms of the revenue sharing program. Excuse me. In terms of eligibility, construction projects obviously are eligible, adding or changing the characteristics of the road, facility, or structure, providing a new or significantly modified transportation facility. A lot of our adjacent localities here have taken advantage of this. Just one I can think of rather quickly, construction project related, on a new location would be the Western Outer Loop there in Culpeper County. That project was applied for using revenue sharing funds over several cycles. The revenue sharing program is available, as I mentioned, to localities across the Commonwealth, as well as urban localities that maintain their own streets. So in the Culpeper District, City of Charlottesville, Town of Warrenton, Town of Orange, Town of Culpeper. Town of Culpeper, the Inner Loop project that goes off 522 around through a couple roundabouts there. That was a revenue sharing project. Reconstruction projects that completely replacing an existing facility or significantly improving the functionality of existing facilities, so it doesn't have to necessarily be a new environment. We did a roundabout in 15 and 53 in Palmyra, in the village of Palmyra. Some of that funding came about through the revenue sharing program. Improvement projects to facilitate or control traffic or pedestrian flow. Examples include turn lanes, new sidewalks, and multi-purpose trails, curb and gutter, or any new installation that will enhance traffic flow or safety. And then, of course, maintenance projects. Typically, maintenance projects that I've seen funded in the past would be pavement structures, bridge structures. Not all pavement structures that are eligible would have to be a pavement structure that has a pavement condition rating of less than 60, which is fairly bad. Obviously, we don't want to replace new pavement, additional pavement. And then a bridge would be something that the sufficiency rating would be fairly low. It would be improving the general condition rating of the structure itself. We talked about who was eligible in terms of locality and urban localities. Revenue sharing projects are expected to immediately, the funds be needed or initiate the progress of a project's development fairly quickly. We're not talking about projects that, we want to have a good idea what the scope of the project is and be able to move that project along through the revenue sharing project. And they address the general public service or need. And real briefly, I'll get into just a little bit. So we have lots of applications across the entire state, and they're reviewed and they're categorized and based on whether they're Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3, and Tier 4. And the funds, obviously we have more requests in funds than we have allocations. So there's a sense of it's not scoring, but they're rated based on those tier systems. Tier 1, and each tier is broken into 2 sections. Tier 1 is any existing revenue sharing project. So you have a revenue sharing project, it's funded with revenue sharing funds, the estimate goes up, you need additional funds, you can wait till the next application cycle comes around, apply for that project again. Since it's already an existing revenue sharing project, that will be considered tier 1. Now, I mentioned that each tier is broken into a couple sections. First, we review projects that have a request of less than $1 million, and then projects have a request of greater than $1 million. So that would be tier 1. Tier 2 would be any construction project that's advancing the advertisement date in the 6-year improvement plan, or it's advancing the project in the locality's capital improvement plan, or their CIP. So if the locality has a project in their CIP, they want it done, and it's 5 years out, as a result of making this application for revenue sharing funds, it's going to be advanced a year or 2 out if you're able to leverage these additional funds, a construction project. And certainly that would be considered tier 2. And again, request less than $1 million, entertain first. That request greater than $1 million, entertain second. And then finally, tier 3 would be maintenance type projects. As I mentioned before, pavements, overlays, things of that nature, bridges. Then finally, tier 4, that would be more study type projects. And study, I'll be candid with you. In the years that I've been dealing with this, which is a number of years at this point, typically tier 1 is funded, tier 2 most of the time is fully funded, sometimes it's prorated. It's about where the funds run out. I have seen funds go into tier 3, but it's on rare occasion. Typically we have a lot more requests for funds than we have allocations. Applications are submitted electronically, through the smart portal. This is the online format in which the applications are received. As I mentioned before, it is a biannual cycle. We'll be receiving applications again in 2019. There is a pre-application that will be submitted sometime around the May, June timeframe. This will be the first time for that revenue sharing. And then finally, the actual applications are submitted in August with a deadline of October 1st. These funds will be for fiscal year 2021 and 2022. So those funds, fiscal year 2021, obviously will come before July 1, 2020. Again, they come up by way of a resolution also passed by the board as well. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to entertain those. Yes, sir.
This TAP that we have, would that be considered a tier 1 project?
So TAP is a completely different program. TAP is a federal fund. It's an 80-20 program. Revenue sharing is 50-50. So in this particular case, it's not even apples to apples. It's a completely different funding program.
And I don't need to interpret. So if funding were short, could the county apply for revenue sharing money at 50-50 to bridge the gap?
Yes.
If I could, I'm not going to ask you to repeat all of that. I don't know how to do that.
Appreciate that.
So the cutoff is roughly so that you can get everything together and it can be presented in the creation of the biannual budget for the General Assembly. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. The cutoff is so that we can take the applications, review them, determine where they fall in that tier process, make a recommendation to the Commonwealth Transportation Board, who would finally approve them.
Right, and that would have to be probably pre-file or at least put in a hopper sometime in December, January for the General Assembly.
Yeah, so typically the Commonwealth Transportation Board would approve these in May. Is about when it's approved.
And as far as the program goes, you wouldn't necessarily care where the locality gets their share, whether we get it through a series of grants or we squirrel away money or whatever, as long as we're obligating ourselves to that matching amount.
I would, in the case of the revenue sharing program, the agreement would be with the locality. Sometimes localities receive money from proffers and developers and sometimes wherever, as long as I get a check from the locality.
But we're obligating ourselves to that share. You don't care where we get that money.
That's correct.
Okay, now, you named a couple of programs that I didn't know about, at least projects rather. I didn't really consider, what I was thinking of was, when I go down 7.9, head over to like Greenville, Madison, I cut through there at, by Culver Shore, Scottsdale's Road, for instance. I think Culver County, did some revenue share work there to fix some of those side roads back in those basically subdivisions.
Sure.
Settletown Road or something.
Yes, sir, that's correct. Culver County has been very active in the last 4 or 5 years. And the biennial cycle is something that just started this last time. Revenue sharing used to be annual. And Culver County has put up $1 million a year for a million match, roughly about $1 million, for the purpose of doing rural rustic type projects. Hard surfacing, gravel roads, pulling ditches, replacing pipes. And as a result of that, over the last, Mark, you may correct me, I'd say 4 or 5 years, I'm not certain. Not all of them are complete, but once complete, they will have hard surfaced about 25 miles of roadways.
That's impressive.
It is. Fauquier County has several projects through revenue sharing in the Van Hill area. Town of Orange has done several pavement reconstruction projects. Town of Warrenton has done some signal synchronization. Albemarle County, excuse me?
Roundabout at Walmart.
The roundabout in front of Walmart between the residence office and the Walmart was done by the town of Warrenton through revenue sharing program.
That was with the town or the county?
That was the town.
County.
That was the town. Albemarle County has done several. City of Charlottesville has done several. Every Culver County, Albemarle County, Town of Warrenton, City of Charlottesville are the regulars in this program.
Yeah, the only reason I guess I even mentioned this or asked for it some time back was because we have several roads on the 6-year road plan that are pretty far out, and those roads need some attention. And I was just trying to figure out ways that maybe this board could, work with their citizens to help improve the quality. But roads didn't get that way by accident. It's a long, water and erosion and storm damage and and there's only so much money. And
That's correct.
we've got to find a way to try and get things moving faster.
I think we've been successful in completing several roads in the last year. So Roland Road, Schoolhouse Road, Battle Mountain Road. So I think Turkey Bridge is probably next on the list. So hopefully we're making our way through them. Certainly not as quick as we would like in terms of the projects that have been identified.
Right. And we can't identify anymore because there's no money for them anyway. So
That's correct.
there may be ways to get them on the list earlier if we have a revenue share situation.
Sure.
So Greg, you mentioned a point system. Is this Commonwealth Transportation Board type of decision as to how they rank these projects or how many points they assign to them and who gets them? Or is it strictly within the VDOT?
So it's within, okay, so there's actually a revenue sharing manual guidelines that sets that criteria. And then there are VDOT staff that go through and determines, okay, is this a construction project? Okay, well, if it's a construction project, first off, is it an existing revenue sharing project? No, okay, so it's not tier 1. Is it a construction project that's advancing in a project in the locality CIP? Well, yes. Is it in their CIP? You have to provide that supporting documentation as well. You can't just say, well, we want to hard surface a road and we're going to put up 500,000. You have to identify the road. It has to be specific in your CIP. You provide that supporting documentation. You're advancing a project, construction's in the locality CIP, a construction project, then it would be tier 2. Is your request less than $1 million? Yes, so it would fall tier 2, less than $1 million. We rank all the projects based on that simple tier 1, 2, 3, and 4 criteria. We started allocating funds at tier 1. If you still have money available, you go to tier 2. If you have money available, you go to tier 3. And at some point, you're going to run out of money to where it may not be a true 50-50 match. It may be a 60-40 match because you're going to have to start prorating those funds. And historically, tier 1 has been fully funded, greater than $1 million and less than $1 million. Tier 2 this last year was fully funded at less than $1 million in request. And then tier 2 greater than $1 million was prorated. But it is very, very, very near 50-50. We were almost able, and we still may be able to. One other little slight nuance, and I'm trying to keep this high level because anything you can make it highly technical. I'm probably past my time, but $100 million is the cap what the General Assembly can pass. There's also a deallocation process where some of these projects have been completed in their surpluses, or maybe, there was an application submitted, funds obtained, and then they were never spent, and a year and a half has went by and nothing's been expended. Those projects may be subject to deallocation, and those funds returned. So we have a pot of funds through this deallocation process that also can be added to this presumably $200 million over 2 years. So through all of that, we're able to, tier 1, tier 2 usually flows well into tier 2, occasionally tier 3, depending on the number of requests. These projects can be VDOT administered, they can be locally administered. If they're VDOT administered, then the locality would provide the match for the phase in which we're in. So we're starting PD. When we did half the money for PD, we'd start the PD phase. Get close to right-of-way, we get half the money for the right-of-way phase. Now, in terms of rural rustics, those projects move rather quickly, and with Culpeper County, we get half the money for the entire project. If it's locally administered, the locality does the work, pays the bill, sends it in for reimbursement requests, we pay half it back as long as everything is eligible. So, either way. All of Culpeper's have been VDOT administered, all the rural rustic type projects. We've done all that work. They supplied the match. That's correct, yes, sir.
Talking about all these tears makes me want to cry.
Yes, sir.
But there's no, this is a little bit off the subject, there's no possibility to, especially when we paved 211, to pave the shoulder for some kind of project or program where it was just pave the shoulders for a number of reasons. There's nothing like that in the works, is it?
Mark, you may be able to speak to that better than myself.
When I answered that before, you mentioned that it had to be a certain amount of accidents to justify the paving. But aside from, getting snow off the thing and control the car when it ran off the road, it would also be a nice place for cyclists.
Right, we do have, when our annual paving schedules, they do a lot, a certain small percentage for roadway widening. And I think we have done that some on 211, I can give you that over. But we have done that, but it's a small percentage. Anything else would require construction funding or revenue share project or some other funding source.
Yeah, thank you.
To kind of piggyback on that, since it's 211, would we have to work with federal funding as well, or we could do that with state? Obviously, you guys are in charge of watching the state, as far as the inspection of it and overall oversight of it, but there's federal funds on the major highways.
Right, a certain amount of our allocation for paving schedule work is federally funded, but we manage it either, we manage both programs, and we pretty much manage them the same way. I mean, there are, depending on what, if there's guardrail involved or different aspects involved, we have to manage them a little differently, but basically they're managed the same way. But, like 211, we're paving that now, that's a primary route. We're paving that, we're basically putting back what was there. We milled and resurfaced, and we're going to put back rumble strips and pavement markings and all that. And it should be finished here pretty soon.
Let me refresh the board that when we go through the 6-year secondary plan and you select your roads for unpaved roads for hard surfacing, we try to work with VDOT so the VDOT can administer the projects and build the projects and keep it under $600,000. It's about the spot size, right?
We're limited by Code of Virginia to $600,000 for state force work.
So, and that's usually the most efficient rather than bringing a contractor in. So if you look at that term, if the board wanted to use revenue sharing to accelerate one of these projects on your 6-year plan, you might be looking for $300,000 of local funds to throw at a $600,000 project to advance it.
That's large enough for us, but it's a small project for you guys.
We have had projects, I want to say the synchronization project in the town of Warrenton, I think it's $105,000. That's total. It's 52,555. I believe that number. I'm not certain, somewhere in that neighborhood. But we certainly have had some of the pavement projects in the town of Orange, pavement reconstruction, have been 20, 30,000. But it's a very short roadway, very short roadway.
Thanks a lot. If y'all think of anything else, if you have questions, you know where to find me.
Finance report. Strategy.
All right, well, I have the floor, but if I might just interject real quickly and introduce, as Superintendent Prince already did, Grant Perdue, sitting over on the side. He started today interning in my office, wanting to see how the sausage is made. He's had a good introduction today. We'll try to get him exposed to various types of local government action in our different offices, and maybe someday he'll be sitting at this table. With that, sir, I'll try to move quickly through these reports. I know we have a lot on your agenda, and I want to give time for others. If you have questions, please bring them forward. I'll focus with the treasurer's reports on the cash balance fund graph that is provided in each of your regular meeting agendas. You see we're still tracking above FY18, which is good. And as we thought last meeting, we did push back the low cash period all the way back to August, which is a good sign for the work being done in the Treasurer's Office and Commissioner Revenue's Office. Their revenues and expenditures are generally on track. A few outliers here and there that we need to keep an eye on, but nothing critical. Happy to take any questions. The next item on your agenda is your accounts payable, broken into two payables, one for October 15 and one for November 5. October 15 is $11,640.68. November 5 is $338,661.98. I do want to point out to you that the November 5 payable does include two payments to Walker Jones for legal services relative to Bragg 1. Have those receipts or invoices behind me. I also distributed at your seat a copy of the Code of Virginia 2.23115 that discusses conflict of interest, and the same topic we discussed at the last meeting. So allows the board and a group of 3 or more to vote on matters such as this if they are not already covered by 15.2 of the Code of Virginia. I think it's 15.2, 15.20. So with that, I'd be happy to take any questions on the payables, and then relative to the Code of Virginia, I've made that section into a bit of a form which would be easily fillable for board members to identify what the transaction is, the nature of your personal interest, and the fact that you are a member of a group of 3 or more, and that you can participate fairly objectively in the public interest.
Could you forward with me a copy of those invoices from Walker Jones?
Can you scan them, or?
Just anyway. Not coming up to say
I haven't seen the Toyota lease trust, I don't believe on here before, in the amount of $314.51 on the more recent batch of invoices, and I was just wondering what that was for.
I believe that may be a new vehicle and social services. This is an item placed on the agenda by the treasurer. Apparently, there was a payment made by the owner for taxes due on the vehicle, but then they were supposed to pay Toyota, so Toyota's being paid back or something. Taxpayer paid tax bill himself and closed please find a refund check in the amount of $314.51.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we pay the bills as presented for October the 15th and November the 5th.
I'll second.
Excuse me, motion made and second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay.
And I'll just
Next item.
remind you relative to the FOIA disclosure, you can read that disclosure into the minutes or provide it to my office within a business day. The next item on the agenda is to authorize the sheriff to purchase a patrol vehicle. Your local code for purchasing requires board approval of purchases in excess of $15,000. This purchase of the vehicle is already budgeted and is being purchased from state contracts, so there's no competition. Normally, if you had multiple bids, the board would be asked to authorize award to that low bidder, but in this case, being a state contract, it just needs to go through the procedure.
We've already approved that amount of money, Mr. Chairman. I move that we authorize expenditure of it.
I'll second.
Motion made and second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay.
The next item on the agenda is a request from me to examine your mid-month accounts payable procedure. I understand that the board passed a resolution on April 4th, 2016 to authorize the payment of certain utility invoices during mid-month. This came on the heels of a letter from your auditor reminding of your obligations pursuant to Code of Virginia 2.24352, which says that you have to pay your invoices promptly. And that is by the terms that you have with the vendor or within, I believe, 45 days. Some of your contracts with the companies that you work with may have 30-day payment terms, and when invoices come in after a cutoff before a regular meeting, it's then longer than 30 days before the next meeting. These would be for the non-utility type invoices. I'd be interested to work out a revised process whereby myself or the chair or someone designated by the board has the authority to identify invoices that can be added to the mid-month payables. Those checks will be cut and sent out on the 15th and then ultimately reviewed by the board, basically approved as to form that were already cut and sent earlier in the month. We don't have to do that, but there are several vendors that we deal with, particularly contractors, which if you hit them at the wrong time of month, then they may be less likely to do business with you in the future if they wait 40 days to get paid. If they just sent your invoice the day after the cutoff.
So as it stands now, the only three bills that you have to pay is Rappahannock, Electric, Comcast, and Central.
Well, perhaps technically, but since then, the board has, by motion, added a couple items to the resolution, which isn't proper form, being that additions should be by motion, or by resolution, if the original was by resolution. So I would suggest that if the board wants to change the process at all, we come back with a revised resolution that clearly shows what that new process is. And they list particular vendors, they may list types of vendors. I reference in the material things like VML, where during the budget process you've already identified what you're willing to pay for insurance. Well, then we still have to run that through the process. It still has to come through the monthly process, and when that invoice arrives the day late, then the check for VML may be late. I call that out because a couple meetings ago I had asked the board to allow me to add it to the mid-month rather than have to do that every time. It'd be nice to have a different method.
So do you want to create a resolution, bring to us next month, or do you want to mention now?
Yeah, I would like to have action at the next adding of the meeting if you would like to have action taken. I just want to know what the board would be interested in order to formulate that resolution.
What you mentioned, the EML payment and this card that we just authorized, I mean, we've already allocated the amount of money, we've appropriated the amount of money, and it's just perfunctory detail. And I have no problem with that.
We have a number of those. For example, the construction work happening behind the courthouse for the
We already
grant.
approved it, you're right.
Yeah, that's already been approved. It's in the budget, and the buildings and grounds may have $70,000 or something for projects like that, that's in the budget, and it's been appropriated. Yet every other payment has to come through this board to be authorized. I'm trying to help things work a little more smoothly without taking away the control that the board desires.
So I guess we need a consensus if you can create a resolution and bring back to us next month to achieve this purpose.
Yeah, if the board is not interested in entertaining a change at all, well, then that's easy for me. If there is an interest to change, I'd like to get the general idea of what you may allow. If you would authorize me to select which ones go on to May 15th, I can incorporate that in resolution. If you would like to authorize the chairman or empower the chairman to make that decision, we can do it that way. Or you could pick any one of you, or any citizen, I suppose, if you really wanted to.
How about you two just collaborate on something, I mean, right after where it's...
Could be both.
Right. Because, I mean, if we've already allocated the money and appropriated, it's just that these surprise things is something that I think the board should be involved in. Or we maybe agree on hiring a contractor, or we're spending X number of dollars, even though we've got $75,000 allocated, we may not want to spend 50 on this work right now.
Yeah, and so that's the case where the last agenda item would come up, where you would have to authorize awarding a contract.
Well, this was also flagged by Roberts and Farmer Cox, right?
And that's
Have
why
you said that?
And that's why you have to amend on table at all, because apparently some of your vendors were very upset that they were having to wait.
Yeah.
So, that works for me, certainly, that it's approved by both myself and the chair. I mean, I'm going to be recommending anything to the chair anyway, so.
I think it's, change isn't always good, but that sounds like a good thing. If we need to do the work, we owe the money, we ought to pay it as soon as possible. Or it could be like between county, where we don't pay them for 6 or 8 months, and then by then they're out of business, and we don't owe anybody any money.
So on your December agenda, I'll have a resolution for consideration, which could still be modified at that time if deemed necessary. All right. The next item on your agenda is regarding your amended budget public hearing. I require authorization from the board to move forward. As you are aware, Code of Virginia, Section 15.2.2507 allows the board to appropriate additional dollars to your budget throughout the year, but when those appropriations exceed 1%, you must advertise a public hearing to amend that budget. In this case, there are several items that have been carried along from last year. Most localities in the area are going through this process right now. And I've included in the agenda a table showing those supplemental appropriations, carryover appropriations. Most of these are neutral to the budget because the money wasn't spent last year in FY18, or it's additional state grant revenue, or state or grant or federal revenue. As you look down through there, the two vehicles that the board authorized purchasing that actually arrived in July, making them an FY19 expense rather than FY18 expense. So those weren't in the adopted budget, because when we adopted the budget, we didn't know they weren't going to show up until July. You have a little bit of extra funding that came from the state for the fire departments. We have a VDEM grant that we intend to use to do a generator connection study. We have the funding that the board previously approved in FY18 for the portable mobile radios. That was a 50-50 grant with the state that wasn't included in the original budget because we weren't quite sure if we would have to buy them by June 30th. It turns out now we need to buy them by March. You have $13,000, which is your courthouse security funds. Those are collected based on court fines and fees, and that's carried forward in each year so they can be spent out. We don't know what the number's going to be until we close the year out. A small amount, $258. This is from the animal-friendly license plates. You get, the state passes this on, but we must provide it to a group that uses it for dog and cat sterilization. And then lastly, the large number, $596,713, is for the school system, and there's a separate memo in the packet that speaks to that. Those are all non-local funds, so it's Fit to Be Fit grant, state and federal dollars that were not spent last year or they weren't sure what the totals would be for FY19 at the time the original budget was adopted. So you can see with all of those, you have $980,000 of supplemental expenditures, $321,000 previously made by this board before now, bringing $1.3 million. So in order to do this, you need to have a public hearing, and I have the documents in the package that are set up for the advertisement of the public hearing that would have to be in the paper 7 days in advance of the public hearing, which I am suggesting be at the December 3rd meeting. I also have the amended budget in the packet. I want to point out that with this, and as I've told the board, I've restructured how social services and the Children's Services Act fund are shown in the budget. The funding is not changed at all. It's just grouped so that those funds are viewable independently. The social services expenses are all grouped together. The social services revenue is grouped together, and then there's the gap that's needed for local funding, and that's shown clearly in the budget, how much local funding is needed for social services. Same thing for the Children's Services Act. That's the way it should be done. We didn't have time to get that in for the FY19 original budget, so through this amendment, I've cleaned it up, worked with Debbie to make sure it's presented in a way that citizens know exactly how many dollars are being used locally to support social services and CSA. Without taking any questions or comments, but I require a motion to authorize me to advertise for this public hearing in December.
I so move.
I'll second.
Motion made and second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay.
A lot of talking by me and a little bit by you.
That's better.
I'm trying to stick to that be brief thing, right?
Very concise. The next item is the contingency budget process. I told you I would keep this in each of your regular agenda documents. There are no requested additions to the table during this meeting, so we can move by. On to appointments. The first appointment, H1, is for the Agricultural and Forestry District's Advisory Committee. As I noted in a previous meeting and via email, there's still 4 vacancies, 2 for landowners and 2 for landowners that are engaged in agricultural or forestry production. We have no applications. I asked all the board members to reach out to their constituents to see if there's anybody who might be interested in serving on this board, or to our local paper to essentially the fact that there are openings and there may be people out there that would really love to do this and meet about once every year. The next item on the agenda is an appointment to the Lord Fairfax Community College Board. The woman who has had this position had to resign because she moved out of town. These are for 4-year terms, and you can serve for 2 successive terms. Worked with Lord Fairfax Community College to receive and understand the appointment process and included that in the packet. We do have one applicant from Rappahannock County, Mike Winger. His information is provided in the packet as well as his email to the board in detail. He has quite a bit of history, including having been a professor in the past. So I believe he can be appointed to the remaining unexpired term for Ms. Holland, which expires in June of 2020. Suits the board.
I'll make a motion to appoint Mike Winger to this board, and he does have vast experience in a variety of education, including he e-college back in the early days, so I think it'd be a big asset to the sport.
I'd second that, Mr. Chairman.
A motion made and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay.
Sounds like a concrete truck, right?
Help machine.
The next item is the appointment to the Rappahannock Community Services Board. Ms. Howland also served as a representative on this board and also causing a vacancy. This vacancy actually expires in December 31, 2018, pretty close. But I believe if the board were to make an appointment today, you could fill that unexpired term as well as the full term that would begin on January 1, 2019. You have one application in your packet from Eve Brooks. You may recall that she was a candidate for the Social Services Board last meeting and was not appointed. So you could appoint Ms. Brooks to the remaining unexpired term through December 31, as well as the first full term that would begin January 1, 2019. These are 3-year terms and the full terms.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make that motion. I'll move to nominate Ms. Brooks for the unexpired term through the end of this year and then the following year to expire December 31, 2019.
Whether it would start January 1, 2019 and run for 3 years.
Correct.
And I'll second the motion.
Motion made and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
The next item is, it was on the agenda last meeting, the need for a parent representative on your community policy management team for the Children's Services Act. We do not have any applicants at this time. This is an important position and board. The state does audit this program, and we have heard from the state in the past, particularly with the other family assessment team, that we didn't have a parent representative, and they made sure we knew about it. So it is important that we find a parent representative to fill this vacancy at some point in time. Unfortunately, I do not have any applicants. If the board would like me to advertise in the paper, or if you think you can go out and shake the trees and find somebody, just leave any direction you care to give.
So I'm wondering, the school has a newsletter. I'm wondering if that's something that would be appropriate to put in the school newsletter to let parents aware of the fact that we need a board member for this.
We've had one in the past too, same issue.
Right.
Is that something you can include in the Tuesday folder with the little handout?
We can.
And how often does this board meet?
Well, once a month right now, but once a month or once every other month. We're talking about going to once a month though, because there's a lot. The $1.6 million budget for CSA is administered by this subcommittee. So it's important.
Where do they meet?
Well, they used to meet in the basement of social services, which is now offices, so it looks like we'll be meeting in the conference room at Extension.
So it's in around here.
Yeah.
I wonder if we could reach out to the other schools in the county too, also to Hearthstone and Belmead and Wakefield. And is there an age limit on the age of the child? It seems like not.
It's a parent representative. I'm a parent.
Are you volunteering there?
I'm already on it.
Good answer. Wow. Love that guy.
While we're on the subject, there's going to be a need for foster homes in the county, and because the state's getting ready to change the regs where if there's a need for a foster home, we're not going to be allowed to send it out to another county, and so we're going to have to pay for it, which is expensive. I think it's way over $900 a day to send these kids to some kind of boarding school type thing.
Contracted.
Yeah, so we need to get the word out that we need foster homes in the county.
The last item under appointments is an appointment to the Fire Levy Board for Wakefield, where you have a vacancy and do not have any applicants. However, we'll note that the Public Safety Committee reviewed and considered potential changes to the fire levy charter, which are later in the agenda. And those recommendations would have you making multiple appointments if the board were to accept the recommendation. So given that we don't have any applicants from Wakefield anyway, I don't think there's any conflict, but just note that further discussion on this point.
Committee reports are ready.
As you can see, after talking with the board and Mr. Wells, changed the agenda just a little bit to add a grouping item called committee reports so that these items aren't in old business, often confusing. And I've just grouped all these committee reports into this one section. So the first item being the building committee update.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, we met on the date of the 17th, yeah, right, 15th was what we tried to shoot for. Okay, we met on the 17th, I'm sorry, and the board discussed a variety of things, and one of them was to appoint a subcommittee to review the RFPs that came in for the architectural engineering firm, the responses to our RFP that we issued. And the subcommittee met this past Friday. And we will be bringing those, I guess, finalists before the building committee later on this month. We meet on the, I'm sorry, I'm ill prepared. I left some of my notes at home, but it'll be, I guess it's the third Monday of the month. We just have to meet. I'm relying on, which doesn't serve me very well at this point.
The 19th?
Something like that, but I forgot to make it on.
No, I think we slid it to the 26th.
Right, that's right.
Because of Thanksgiving.
You're correct, I'm sorry.
Yes,
I stand corrected.
9:30 on the 26th.
9/30 and 26th. At that time, we'll present the subcommittee's report on what we do to further the RFP before we make any recommendations to this board as a whole. Also, an item of interest, and we received an email from another individual about the use of the old admin building. The town of Washington submitted a letter. They would like to use the old admin building, but we couldn't come to any consensus on the building committee because in reality, part of the RFP process is to have a space study done, and to do anything now with one of our properties would be basically to tie our hands when we may need that building for some future use. So we have no recommendation from the building committee to the full board at this point, except to rebuild the building. I think Mr. Curry and Mr. Jenkins have an electrician over there because it needs a serious electrical upgrade before it's used by anybody.
And, we did walk through the building with an electrician and have a rough cost of about $10,000.
That's for a new service and rewiring.
Yes.
Yeah, right now it's a fire hazard.
So it's my impression that the town, in the event they're able to rent this space, is willing to pay for that upgrade.
Yeah, I don't understand what the big push for using this space is when there's space available right now. Move in within a week probably across the street where we are in the basement of the old Kramer building.
For the town, it's probably the location, or whatever. And they're really only asking for 6 months. And I would say if they're going to, of course, I think everybody, once I've talked to them, agree that if you leave the building empty for a long period of time, it's going to send it over. Down, and so this would get somebody in there, they would pay for the upgrades, they're only committed for 6 months. They've offered $500 a month. I would say that I would tend to go ahead and let them occupy the building, but either for the 500 or for the same amount per square foot that we're paying for our rent over at the Tula building, Kramer building, which would probably be a little more, I guess $16 a foot over there. So I think it makes sense to go ahead and let them move in for now. It's 6 months at a time, so it's not like I don't think anything's, it's been sitting empty for a year now.
Well, that's not been a year, but it precludes this board from using it. What we were talking about when we did the building tour and then we established this building committee was that the commercial revenue building, for instance, will probably need to be vacated while we do the necessary repairs. We've got no place to go. If the board remodels that enough to move, these other office people in, then that makes our renovations of these other buildings easier. We've got no place to move them now. And if we're talking about
opinion is we should pay for the electrical upgrades and then have it available for the Commissioner of Revenue to move in while
we may have to, yes, sir. And the town is not under the gun, they can move right across the street now and use this. That's what available.
Yeah, well, I mean, so could we, for that matter, but I guess it warrants more discussion.
Well, there was quite a bit of discussion around this. And the other way to do this, I mean, it is a proposal of a short-term lease of 6 months. But if we want to be able to exercise the ability to terminate the lease, a 3-month period or 60 days notice or something like that, in the event that something happens so quickly that we felt we needed it. I don't know what these RFPs are looking like, but I'm not sure that we're going to get to a place where we're going to know what to do with this building in the next 6 months. It's income that we could be enjoying on the building right now. It's sitting absolutely vacant, and Mr. Jenkins has pointed out that this thing sits fallow. It's only going to get worse. So it's a bird in the hand right now. But we may be able to push, that we can have the flexibility of getting occupancy.
Bring the board's attention, last month, there was both the CSB representative, or actually the executive director of CSB, who said that they need space in the county so they could better offer services. And the Department of Social Services said that they need space. They're using a hallway now. So the county has needs of its own. And if we fix that building up, we can use it. And I don't understand why there's this push for the town to use a building that we may have to push them out of, and they could go across the street right now.
If they're going to pay for the electrical upgrade and pay some rent on it now.
But it's a county building, the county ought to be involved in that process. I don't know why we would advocate our responsibility to fix up a building to some other group.
I think if the building is going to be for rent too, it should be advertised as being for rent to a larger audience than the people that are on the building.
That's what I don't understand. Why would we just single out the first application that comes in for somebody to use the building, when there's others that may be interested in it, and we need it ourselves most likely?
Well, we've had an interest from the private practice for counseling, thank you. And I think it was the recommendation of the county administrator, just a recommendation, that we not necessarily entertain any private leasing at this time.
If we haven't advertised it, we would accept any private offer.
He came in unsolicited.
Both of them do.
That's true.
Well, I mean, if we're not going to rent it out to a private individual, there's no need to advertise. I mean, it is a county building, and it's a government building.
Okay. I think, excuse me, Mr. Parrott, but I think the other thing, Mr. Sullivan, he's part of this committee, is obviously the mayor, did make a point. There was nothing here in the spirit of the town and the county working in collaboration to try to help each other out. The town has got offices currently are in the upstairs of the town hall, and they're not particularly accommodating, as well as the restroom facility in that building. So he made the appeal and presented this letter as part of, in the spirit also of the town and the county, being able to work together here to help each other out. They can pay us some income, we can make some revenue on this. They'll fix the building up for us in the way of, the electrical, which is the biggest safety issue. And in turn, we the county would be helping the town satisfy a need that they have for providing some far superior space than they have right now. Plus, we have the flexibility of getting out of it, so.
They don't have any flexibility, but point of order, with all due respect, the mayor, as part of the building committee, should have recused himself from any discussion. And he did not.
Well, he did sign the letter that was presented to us.
He signed the letter, he presented it as a member of the committee to the committee, and then he discussed it. And at the end, he said he would recuse himself from voting on it, but you can't discuss it as a matter of the committee, and then introduce it. You can't, I think we should just walk away from this because it's already tainted because of the process. You had a member of the committee appointed by this board that presented this, and then discussed it, and then said that he would recuse himself.
Which is it, Mr. Fraser? Is it the procedural problem, or is it the problem of the offer itself?
Well, it's both, because that is improper to begin with, but this board may need that space.
Well, agreed. And I just feel that there's a flexibility there to be able to get that space when the board needs it. And we have the ability to help out the town, which is not primary, but we do have the ability to make some revenue and get this building fixed up.
The amount of revenue, especially if it's, whether it's the $500 a month that's offered, which is below what we're looking at, or if it's Mr. Parrish's suggesting that it's what we're paying across the street, they can just simply move across the street and they don't have to worry about it splitting them out in 6 months.
It's not what they've asked for us to consider.
But our committee had no commitment on it.
That's true. True. We did not make a recommendation.
Right.
That's accurate. Did you make a motion, Mr. Parrish? No.
Have not.
I move we table this until our next meeting.
Second.
Motion made, second, all those in
Wait,
favor?
wait, what about discussion here?
Oh, okay.
So in the meantime, when you say table, then we won't do anything until we take it back up to the next month and talk
And
about it more?
there'll be a building committee meeting
Meeting
between now and then,
yeah.
and perhaps we'll have a recommendation on how to move forward.
Okay.
I think we really are premature doing anything with any of our assets until we've had some sort of
I just want to clarify the motion.
discussions on space study.
But I have another matter of discussion here. There was also a request by the theater to be able to utilize the building for the Christmas play, to use it as their staging area for kids, for the bathroom, for the play. Now, the play, I think, runs, when is our meeting in December? Third?
November 30th, well, it's a week, I'm sorry, the week before November 30th for Tech Week, and then the first 2 weekends in December. So the last performance would be Sunday the 8th.
So the question is the bathroom in working order in that building?
Yes. I wouldn't recommend it for public use, but if the theater,
Changing
kids
clothes
or
or
whatever,
bathroom, yeah.
What about the problem that water heater won't disconnect?
there is no hot water.
Well, I was just wondering if that could also be discussed at the next building committee meeting.
Certainly, it's
In time to be able to be used by the theater.
Is there a date for the building?
Yeah, we just said it's November 26th.
Who's the next one?
So, if you want to get into your discussion, my recommendation is that if you're not going to have the building provided to some other entity, that RAC, who already uses the building across the driveway, be allowed to use this building.
Yeah, if we could do something about that water heater, so that it's not a fire hazard, I have no problem with that. Mr. Jenkins said it wouldn't turn off, and if we can get it off, then we don't turn it on again.
It's,
Disconnected.
But you still won't have the electric panel fixed.
no, well, the electric panel will be in the same condition it was for the last 50 years.
We'll just be using it if you like.
Put the door open so they can always hear.
It's the water heater situation, I mean, if the breaker won't turn off, you can't have that on if people can't use it.
We can make sure that it's disconnected. It doesn't work anymore.
I don't see whether it'd be a problem for another group to utilize it that way. Just changing the bathroom.
Okay. I guess we'll vote.
Is there a consensus on that?
Discussion over.
So,
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay.
And then do we have consensus though, that the theater can use that building?
I don't think so, yeah.
I just wish there was something on the agenda to that effect for making that decision. I have no issue with them using it.
You want to
I
amend
just-
the agenda?
Well, I think that based on the fact that you already have an arrangement, an agreement with RAC to use one of your county buildings, to extend that opportunity across the street really is,
That makes sense. That we can view it as an extension of the agreement we already have in place.
which is a handshake.
Be flexible.
Well, actually, there is the request that they use this building for the holiday show on the agenda item details.
Okay.
So technically, it is on the agenda. I think. You agree with that?
I don't have a problem with it, I just wanted to be clear about it.
Have you seen it, partner?
Maybe temporarily to wrap it and prepare for the holiday show.
You all have comp tickets.
Sure,
I show up on Friday night.
yeah, I can hold the rest of the good. Too right, it is on the agenda.
What's the value of those tickets?
Pardon?
What's the value of the tickets?
It depends, on
Priceless.
$15 unless you're 12 years
You're
old.
allowed to take it.
Okay, next item is the town site, Mr. President Smith.
We have no reason to meet.
All right, next is the broadband committee update. Mr. Rosinski.
Mr. Chairman, I think most of what the committee did not meet. I think the committee will meet again once before the end of the calendar year. I think really the only update with respect to this was found in your Mr. Curry's weekly report. He and I met with Mr. Gerhard of the Fauquier County Board of Supervisors to better understand where Fauquier is right now and what they are doing, maybe of help to Rappahannock, either not so much what they're doing, but just best practices and what they're learning. I think one of the things that came out of that meeting was discussion on a company called OmniPoint, which has a unique technology which may work well in Rappahannock County. It's a they call LTE technology that provides high-speed internet without line of sight limits, or it's not limited by line of sight. So I think Mr. Curry and I and the board members certainly invited. I think we're going to seek out someone with OmniPoint and sit down with them. We're also going to try to do the same with Rappahannock Electric Co-op, even though we're not aware of any high-speed internet programs or infrastructure that they're introducing now with their utility.
Are we still partnering with Virginia Broadband?
I don't know.
I don't either.
Yeah. But I think meeting with Virginia Broadband is probably a good idea too. And then we also have a meeting scheduled with a group in Loudoun County called All Points Broadband. And these again were, as reported last month, meetings we're trying to set up to get smarter about what other localities are doing. And I don't know, Mr. Curry, if you have anything you want to share with respect to Chantel and what they're doing now, if that's applicable or it's an ongoing development.
I'll just note there that I think I mentioned last month they have turned up service for the library and the schools, and they're currently working on proposals to extend service to our tower sites for backhaul as well as to the town to serve the businesses and the public bodies here. I expect to receive something soon from them.
And what is the, where does Piedmont Broadband fit in all this?
They're still, you know, they're still our wireless internet service provider of choice. I mean, they're still here in the county. Well, obviously, they're the primary, the only one, the primary provider.
One of the reasons that Mr. Luzinski and I wanted to meet with All Points is to, and they probably wouldn't be interested in coming to our area, but it would be a somewhat unbiased discussion and opinion as to what things matter to them to provide service to the community, what moves their needle to profitable versus not, viable versus not, and have that conversation with them may be helpful for us to understand what it would take locally, whether that be codes or financial involvement, what it might be. And then we can apply that to any other provider.
So, Mr. Chairman, we'll attempt to schedule a broadband committee meeting. If not between now and December, certainly by the end of the calendar year. We'll have a couple more meetings under our belt, and we'll make sure the supervisors know when those meetings are in case they'd like to join us. And we'll have a summary of those committee meetings.
Well, if more than one extra board meeting member comes, please let us know so we can advertise it as a board meeting.
Thank you. Rules Committee, Mr. Fraser.
Yes, sir. As you know, Mr. Chairman, we met, you and I, and we had staff with Mr. Dalton and Mr. Curry. We had Mr. Brooks was there with us. I can't remember if anybody else was. So we discussed the 4 different options that are on the, actually 5 options that we could look at as far as working on some Rappahannock Code of Ethics. I tend to think that, whatever we work on should be easy to read, not very long, and as this stuff keeps coming out, concise and short and sweet. So I guess we need some more direction from this board as to what we really should be working on. So if you will, if you take a look at the 5 different things that are on the agenda, you've got the Code of Ethics, you've got the Fairfax Ethics, you've got the Gloucester Ethics, you've got Gloucester Standards of Conduct, and then the proposed Rappahannock Code of Ethics. The first Code of Ethics was drafted by Debbie Kaiser, I think, back in 2016. The board never adopted it. I think the Fairfax Code of Ethics deals mostly with the personnel, whether it's volunteers or employees, and it also says the elected officials and appointees, but it's very lengthy. And I personally don't think we should be re-adopting what's already in the Code of Virginia. It's already in the Code of Virginia, it's just redundant. So I guess we need a little bit more discussion from this board to give the committee some direction.
Well, I think I noted here on the last option, which was, I guess, taken from Madison as a template of documents based on documents used by Madison County. And I guess, Mr. Goff, you looked at this and you said you recommended that whatever we do here be an amendment to Chapter 30, as opposed to an ordinance or, well.
My thought was, where are we going to find it in the future? If it was just stuck in the minutes, it's going to be kind of lost.
Right. And that makes sense, but I think as we discussed, that if it's part of the county code, then a violation of it would be a misdemeanor. So I don't know if we need some sort of statement that it wasn't necessary to be a misdemeanor. Which then means, what is it that we're exactly trying to do?
And I see there's an enforcement paragraph in this too, as to what remedies we have or would have.
Right, if it's part of the county code, enforcement, a violation of this would result in somebody being charged with, possibly with a misdemeanor. Then who would enforce it? Unfortunately, I think, and I'm kind of mean, probably all of us have violated something on this. Conduct of meetings, communication, conflicts of interest, I don't know about that. Gifts and favors, I'm not sure about that. But, everybody makes mistakes. And whether we do it intentionally or not, that's where we get into trouble.
Well, Mr. Goff, if we had language in here that talks about, nothing in here be construed to be a misdemeanor offense, does that make everything else, does that void everything else we're doing here, or is that simply just a statement we can add to this?
Well, I think it's a statement you can add to it. I'm not aware, and maybe Mr. Brooks can correct me, Mr. Regman, if I'm wrong. I don't think that the other counties' codes of ethics are enforced through a criminal proceeding. And it would be easy enough to draft language that would exempt violations of that code of conduct from prosecution under the general enforcement statute, saying that they're not misdemeanors. The code of Virginia allows you to assess penalties amongst the board, members of the board, for, quote, disorderly conduct. But here again, I thought that the sense of the board was last time, correct me if I'm wrong, that this was more or less an aspirational type of document that was going to be sort of like, you know, our 10 Commandments, kind of the rules we live by, sort of admonition more so than a penal code.
Well, we are signing on to it. You know, it is a, you know, there is a document, there is a place here for each board member to accept it.
Yes, yes, and you could not put it in the county code. The problem with that is that I think it would be obscured by time.
I think that's correct.
It's just in a minute book over at the clerk's office and gathering dust. I think it would probably be more of a statement, I think, to amend the county code. And you don't have to put it in chapter 30. You know, you could also have it as its own standalone chapter 1.1, for that matter. Any way you believe that it would be appropriate in the code of ethics.
Some sort of preamble to our plan.
Like a preamble, exactly right.
And that the Gloucester County adopts their, the two documents, Code of Ethics and Standards of Conduct, annually at their organizational meeting. So there's a process, and I guess that's how they found to not lose the document. Most of the times it doesn't change. Every once in a while, a word changes, add an extra point for concise.
Well, that's two particular things that we could take a look at. We could write it up either or, a preamble to the county code, so that it wouldn't necessarily be a misdemeanor. Because right now, the way I forget which section it is of the code, but a violation of the county code can be deemed a misdemeanor.
Well, we could amend that section too, to say except for,
Right.
chapter 1.1 of this.
Maybe
code.
one or both.
Yeah, we can do it either way, just so it's clear, because, you know, some of the way that any of these things are drafted is sort of a prosecutorial nightmare, because there's a lot of adjectives used and things that make it difficult to exactly ascertain what type of conduct would fit into what is prescribed. And it's, I think, necessarily so, because it is more or less not a penal code, but an aspirational document of how we can conduct ourselves in the ideal world.
I found out over time they don't do that if you put them in the sink.
Well, we can be on the happy note.
As I noted at the committee meeting, I thought that the most important thing for the board to consider is that most of your citizens don't understand the complexities of COIA or FOIA and some of these other already legal requirements of the board. And so this is an opportunity for you to put in common language, those things that may otherwise already be prevailed upon you by the Code of Virginia, but you do it in language that most people understand without having to dig through 2 or 3 different code books.
Well, I guess if it pleases the board, we can meet again this month and bring something back to the December meeting, like a version A or version B. It would have to be published, or if it's going to be part of the county code, it would have to be advertised and published, correct?
Yeah, and I wouldn't propose to do that before the language is brought back to the board reviews it, and then finds it acceptable to then put out for public hearings.
We're talking about possible adoption in January.
Well, if we're gonna renew it every year in January, it would make sense to go ahead and get on track.
Yeah, if you're going to do it every year, then I would suggest that it not be part of your ordinance. But if it's going to be part of your ordinance, then you must go through the public hearing process.
So we can bring that back next month.
You can
We
bring
can
it
have it
up.
ready for the December meeting so that we can republish the deadline, or we could just add it to the January agenda for adoption. Is that acceptable to the board?
So, just to be clear, if it wasn't part of the county ordinance, if it wasn't a preamble, would preamble be considered part of the county ordinance or no? Oh, I guess.
Well, I mean, you know, as we the people of the United States, you know, is that part of the Constitution? Well, it's hortatory, precatory, it has no legal weight. So I think that if you want to make it part of the county code, there should be an explicit statement that you, if this is the case, that you don't want to subject violators thereof to the otherwise criminal penalties. Or as Ms. Smith saying, at the organizational meeting, you could adopt it every year in January as part of the organizational meeting, and then it would simply be spread on the minute books. But do it every year, that might keep it in front of the public as well. But that's a decision that you all have to make. I think that it would be cleanest to have it as a preamble in the published code, anybody who opens up the code, and then simply just accept it from the criminal sanction. And that's simple. And then it's permanent, and anybody who wants to read it can read it.
Yeah, it's bad enough when we adopt something that gets lost in the public, but we've got stuff that's got lost by staff. I mean, they can't find it, it's not their fault. It's just, oh, it's got some dates on it. Nobody knows where it looks like.
Well, if there's a consensus to do that, maybe we have drafted that way and brought back for, rather than options, just have drafted that way and brought back to the December meeting for consideration. Probably don't need the meeting then. As the rules committee.
I don't think that we would need to.
So should I draft the language that exempts the violations thereof from the criminal penalties and attach that perhaps as the amendment to that enforcement section, so for the rules committee to consider before the next year?
I would think that would be a great help, yes, sir.
All right.
I guess we have to get together instead of waiting.
Next item is the Public Safety Committee.
The Public Safety Committee meeting was last Monday at the library, and we had a lively discussion of a number of topics that I wanted to bring to the board. One we'll get to later in the agenda, which is the makeup of the Fire Levy Board, the charter for that board. But the other item that was brought forward was and they exceeded the requirements of our agreement with them in supplying this. It's a mid-year update on the response times for the volunteer company. So actually Harold, who just left, put those numbers together and very graciously supplied us a mid-year report.
And they are attached to this agenda item.
Yes, and they are on, they've been posted to board docs for your review, even though they are only required to report these numbers to us once a year. It really helped us get a good snapshot of this being our first year into agreement of where we're at, and to look at where we might want to have those numbers going forward. The other item that came up at that meeting was the next generation 911 equipment and transitioning to the new CAD system, and that it might be helpful to emphasize to folks the importance of making sure the correct 911 address is posted on their property. So when they call for responses, they have an address to which vehicles can respond quickly with no lack of service. So as that moves forward, I think that's scheduled to roll out spring, summer next year, that we make sure we start having uniformity in the addressing as people are dispatched to get units there as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and we were also made aware that there are some addressing errors that have been made over the years, and as we roll out the new system, which is, dare I say, GIS-based for 911, we will be fixing those errors, which will require us to go to citizens and ask them to change their address. Not always met with kind responses.
How do we enforce that? That was not going to be my next question. I mean, well, I know like some localities with new houses, they don't issue a certificate of occupancy until the address is noticeable.
Going forward, these the physical structures will be GPSed in. In the past, they were measured off from known positions. We operate on a grid system, and so some of that measuring in the past wasn't quite accurate.
Well, I complained about that 20 years ago. The fire and rescue people said it was fine for ordinance, but it wasn't very good for finding it with an manual.
Well, you got your way now, 20 years.
20 years later.
Yeah. So it is an issue with citizens, with the criticality of receiving service when they need it. Hopefully we'll prevail upon them to go ahead and make that change so that our volunteer fire and rescue units can find where they need to go. This will, and I'm sorry to say this and steal one more piece of your thunder here, this will also result in a new map book for our first responders. So all the addresses will be updated in that map book, and then those first responders will be able to use the map book to find the structures, and hence the need to change a couple of addresses.
So it's rolling out first in the Washington area, and then Sandy's going to work through different areas, but there's quite pervasive changes, and it will be an ongoing project for quite some time.
Okay, we don't have a finance committee, right?
No, sir, but I think the next, maybe through the month of November, we can bring some proposal back for December so that the first year, maybe we'll make some appointments as it chooses to.
Okay, take the whole business. Fire levy over there.
The Public Safety Committee was requested to review the Fire and Levy Board Charter by the Board of Supervisors, which they did at the last meeting. During that discussion, there was a motion, second, that passed, recommending that the Fire Levy Board Charter change such that it references the current Fire Rescue EMS Services Agreement, and also that the board membership changed slightly in that the representatives for the Volunteer Fire and Rescue Association, the representative for the chiefs of the 7 fire rescue companies, those remain and continue to be appointed by those respective agencies. But the citizen representative of each voting district in the county be selected by the board member for that district, rather than be appointed by the board. So it would still be the 8-member fire levy board, and their duties would be similar, albeit directly linked to the Fire and Rescue Services Agreement and the slight change in how that process works. But the significant change would be that the appointment would be made by you as board members individually rather than by the board as a whole for the 5 districts. And as I noted earlier, this is obviously directly related to your current vacancy from the Wakefield district, but rather than the board making that appointment, if you were to change the charter, Chairman Welch would make that appointment individually. The other point was that those citizens would not be members of the fire and rescue companies. Based on that, I did develop a draft charter that incorporated those changes for the board's consideration. Hopefully it'll make your job easy. It was one page before, and I managed to continue to make it one page. Happy to take any modifications to that, or you can accept it as presented. This is not something that requires a public hearing, but you don't need to change it today by this deadline or requirement.
So, Mr. Curry, if we did adopt this, then we have the citizen representative would be immediately deemed vacant, and then board members.
That was also, I'm sorry if I didn't mention that, that was also part of the motion on the Public Safety Committee, that the 5 representatives basically end, citizen representatives end, and new members be appointed. Of course, they could be the same member as long as they're not a member of one of the fire and rescue companies.
And how would we do that? I guess we pick somebody and forward their name and information to you?
Yeah.
I mean, if we adopt them.
Right. Yeah, I would prefer to have something in writing, just for the records in our file, and then we'll track it in administration. Can put it back out to the board just as an informational item.
Do you want them to fill out an application just so that you have that formality?
Probably would be a good idea.
That would be fine.
But as we noted in the last item, it took me a long time to find the last version of the fire levy charter because it's lost in the minute books. And Board Docs is a great help now because you can go in and search for items, but predating that, it's hard to find things.
I did think that perhaps to avoid confusion in the future, we should emphasize that it's an appointment by that individual board member and not a nomination and vote process by a full board.
Okay. Do you have any recommended language for the 4th bullet?
Kind of says it already, doesn't it?
Well, I mean, I think an actual board member doesn't have any, I like the idea of this, it's uncomplicated, but one board member doesn't really have authority to appoint people.
Only if the Board of Supervisors were to take an action to approve a charter, which is basically granting that authority, much like you've granted the authority to the association and the chiefs.
Okay, well then my point's made, it's covered.
It says here also that the supervisor member sets the term.
Well, so forever or a year?
Yeah.
I guess I would just add to the 5 citizen members, 1 from each voting district of the county, appointed by the Board of Supervisor member for her district for a term set by the Board of Supervisors member, not subject to a vote of the entire board.
Not requiring.
Not requiring, there you go.
That term probably shouldn't be any longer than the supervisor's particular term, because the any new incoming supervisor would want to probably be able to have the ability to appoint someone.
Well, you're correct, but I think that language would already do that, because if you have a change with the board member, then that board member would be to make a reappointment.
The wording you've used at other times to basically serve at the pleasure of the board member.
Okay.
So to serve at the pleasure of the board, and then the other thing, not requiring,
Vote by the full board.
not vote by the full board.
Serve at the pleasure of the board member. Okay.
I'm just trying to clear it up for the next county administrator who has to dig it out from the minutes.
Jeez, thanks. When's that going to happen?
Like 20 years from now.
We've got a review today.
So I'd like to put that in the form of a motion.
That's approving as amended.
Yes.
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
Motion made and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And I also, motion carries. Here we go. Deteriorating landmark.
I'm sorry, Mr. Curry, are you going to make a report on this, or?
We are. Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
I was just trying to.
If you weren't, I was going to add questions, so if you're going to make a report.
We can do both. Significantly fewer complaints to our office than the preceding month. We have basically 3 complaints to our office, which have been referred to CenturyLink and Verizon, which seems like good news unless it's the fact that people don't know to complain to our office. So we'll just continue to make sure we get the word out that after you've submitted your ticket to the telephone company, and if you don't get the response you need, please call us. We're now transitioning over to complaints about the temporary work that was done to fix the original complaint to make sure the permanent work comes along. So that's good. The service is working. Now there's wires left on the ground and things like that that need to be taken care of. So we continue to follow up on those matters. Happy to take any questions.
I had forgotten about this. Mr. Goff is not here, but in the minutes, I think of last month, I think the board had talked about having a county attorney research remedies, if any.
Yeah, I sent him an email reminding him of that, and I haven't heard back from him.
Send another email, will you?
So we're on new business?
No. We are, yeah.
Letter of support. Mixed delivery preschool.
Ms. Gripsley's been very patiently waiting here till we got to this item. This is a letter of support for the VECF Mixed Delivery Preschool Grant. She and I worked together to prepare this draft letter that is in the packet for consideration by the board to be approved for it to be signed by the chairman. With that, I think she gave a significant, comprehensive background of the grant earlier, so I don't want to belabor the point. But I think the grant application would be stronger if it did have the weight of the Board of Supervisors behind it. And one of the big concerns was whether this would be considered supplanting, and we wanted to make it very clear that the action taken by the board earlier this year was one-time funds for hopefully a one-year fix, and that this is, and you actually talked about grants at that time, and hopefully this will help be the continuing funding.
So, can I just make a motion that we go ahead and approve this, to have the chairman sign this letter, send it up?
I second that motion, Mr. Chairman.
Very good. Motion made and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried. Go ahead.
I just had a question for Dr. Grimsley. I wanted to make sure that, in no way does this grant make it more difficult for other child care providers, in an entrepreneurial spirit. I just want to make sure that people are still competing on even footing for these dollars. And my concern is that in our stopgap measure in establishing the program with CCLC, which I was more than happy to do, and now we've had an additional year at the last meeting, and now we're looking at an additional 2 years with this program at CCLC. I just wonder, I'm concerned that, it's kind of funneling those, funds into a business without maybe it being open to competition from other businesses.
I'm
correct you about that, I'm sorry, but I was contacted by one or two individuals in the community that had the same complaint, that it seemed like we dealt exclusively with CCLC without any discussion or interaction with any other preschool provider in the community.
I'm very serious in wanting to make sure our children's needs are met, but I also want to make sure that entrepreneurial spirit in our childcare community is alive and well.
Yes, and that's a fair question. So this grant is advantageous to that request because what we're doing is actually involving them a whole lot more in outreach efforts to at-risk children. So remember, this was not the clientele they were reaching anyway because these are students in poverty, children in poverty. But this, if they come onto collaboration with us in this grant, they can raise their standards to be eligible to receive those subsidies. Right now, they don't qualify. So CCLC was our only provider that would actually qualify to receive subsidies for those children. And they're the only ones approved right now by DSS to do that, other than one other provider outside of the county. So in effort, we're trying to get more places to serve more at-risk youth. So that's the spirit of this grant. So it will open up those doors, actually. So,
is there a way then, I guess, to make it a voucher program or to make it, or to put, to figure out a way to engage more people in this process on the front end?
And letters to all the providers were sent out. We had a conference call. We're still waiting a few of the providers to say whether or not they can meet the quality standards that are required by Virginia, the state of Virginia, to do this because it's a public-private partnership. As part of the single entry point of the grant, we would have a space if they met those quality standards and came in to be an approved site, then yes, there would be choice for parents to say, okay, I want my child placed in this provider. So, but they have to meet the qualifications first. And that's what the grant will do. It'll enable them to have the resources to be able to do that.
I see. Almost a chicken and egg type situation.
Let's start somewhere, but it's a great conversation we're having with everybody along the same vein of reaching all of these children. There were so many. I mean, Skyline Cap said we had 2. We found 23 just by collaborating with our agencies. So we have contradictory data to say, we do have these needy families, and they are coming forward knowing that there's that partnership in a stronger program. So.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Any other listed?
We got one.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, we voted.
I think you voted.
Discussion.
Discussion followed the vote. That's all right.
If they're short-term memory, they're confused by a long-term memory, so forget which one came first.
Right. Any next, Mr. Ferguson?
I am.
Citizen discussion.
Mr. Frazier asked that I place an update on the Capielli zoning enforcement status. Generally, zoning enforcement is not a public discussion, but I can say that Michelle and I inspected the site last week, and we're currently working on updated enforcement measures.
Do you have anything to add about the court hearing, the injunction? I mean, we didn't investigate it, but it involves our action.
Right. Mr. Mitchell was there, and he reported back that, and I think most people have seen the temporary limited injunction, basically reinforcing local code, stating that the Capiellis could not add certain trash and junk to the property, to include a bridge, deck. And beyond that, I don't know that there was much requested, other than there was a request relative to contractor's office and storage yard, which the judge did not rule on. My understanding from Mr. Mitchell was because there was no evidence provided to that end.
Were you able to get a letter in regarding the other part of the code that required a letter from the county administrator? Is it 141 or 143?
Michelle and I are both working on that together right now.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I have a request for the short recess.
Yes, yes, we can do that.
I was hoping somebody would.
Oh, we haven't forgotten who we were.
I think we just finished. I believe we've made it to item L1, which is County Administrator update, and I'll make this very brief. A couple things. Regarding the regional radio system, I am still waiting on SBA relative to the Amosville Tower. They're supposed to be getting the documents that provide us free use of that tower. So they promised that to me last week and it didn't come. So I reminded them of their promise. I should be receiving pricing from Harris as input to our future, our FY20 budgeting efforts for 800 megahertz sites, one or two. I'm not sure what that cost will be, but that would improve the coverage of the vehicle and portable radios of our first responders. The infrastructure improvements that we're making here in the county are limited to the pagers, which are also very important. So this would help us make some budgeting decisions going forward. And then, as I noted earlier, I'm working with Chantel and other vendors on backhaul from our tower sites to send data to the tower sites and bring it back to our dispatch center as well as back to the Culpeper-Fauquier data ring. The courthouse ramp project is underway and back, and it's unfortunately been delayed due to weather issues. They actually poured concrete today, and it'll be ready to walk on tomorrow. Ricky's going to work to put some temporary railings up so that we can get that back in action as quickly as possible before the new railings are placed. The FY 2020 budget schedule is in draft right now. I shared that with the board, and I'll be asking you for your feedback on that so we can approve it, or you can approve it on December 3rd. The school board will be reviewing the budget schedule on their December meeting as well, and of course they have to work together. So if you could review that draft schedule, that would be good, and then working kinks out between now and December and get that adopted. The draft is based on what we did last year, with just shifting the days a little bit here and there to align with this year's calendar. Just a plug for the Recreational Facilities Authority that their new shuffleboard court is placed. That's grant funded from PATH Foundation. They've also purchased some upgrades for some of the other equipment there, tennis and whatnot. And next to the shuffleboard court will go cornhole equipment, which these are actually concrete cornhole ramps. They're 600 pounds a piece to keep people from walking off with them. Bring your own bags, so those will be arriving at some time here in the near future. Rick and his guys helped get the other shuffleboard equipment and wheel with the cornhole equipment unloaded and brought over to the court. And then Recreational Facilities Authority members and their families helped do the installation. The county audit is in full swing, and auditors are in town this week. They should be wrapping up this week, and we should have our audit report by the end of the month, which is the state deadline, which I suspect has not been met ever for Rappahannock, so we might actually meet that deadline. It would be very nice. And then the board will be able to receive a report from the auditor in December. And lastly, I already mentioned Mr. Purdue, who's decided he likes politics and wants to be an intern. Boy, what an introduction today.
Could you repeat that?
No.
It took him a year to get to that point of view.
Memorandum regarding sign orders.
I just placed this item. This is the board passed a motion at your earlier meeting in October, sending direction to the Planning Commission. I committed that to writing in a memo to the Planning Commission and the zoning administrator, and I just placed that memo on the agenda for the board and the public's review so they knew what message had been passed along.
Well, we need to work on the sign ordinance because it's grossly way behind. It's not as far behind as some other projects.
Right, so comp plan, May amendments, sign ordinance.
Sounds good.
And that's what the memo says. And then next in your agenda packet are your reports, your building permit report, your zoning administrator report.
Actually, Gary, we moved to
I'm sorry,
correspondence.
M2, I'm sorry. M2 was the relocated item from T1, which is now M2. I will go down to T. And then attached to this is a letter to the Board of Supervisors from the Rat Trails Coalition, which is now provided as a correspondence and information item.
Right, so this, basically this states that they're not going to comply with the vote of September 5th by this body. And then the other document that now is,
That was sent to me earlier today, and I
right, you
attached
just got it today, so that would be an addendum item to start with as far as.
Well, I don't think it's a decision point of any.
Right, but it's not really reflective of anything new either.
Just if they raised more money and they got maintenance grant, 5,000 a year into the plan.
It says that there's $75,000 more in maintenance. The rest of it, the other money are the same, but we directed on, the vote was a letter of credit for design, construction, and maintenance for 15 years, and even if we were to accept this as being anywhere close to coming up with any additional funds, it falls short of what this board directed them to do. So,
I think all they really want to do is approve to the taxpayer that it's not going to cost any funds. I think that's, we're looking for that.
they can do that by coming up with a letter of credit. They've had 2 months to do that. And all this transpired over the last couple of days, whatever it was that they've done here. There's still no proof that this money exists. But
Well, it's a little bit of catch-22, because I think we said they can't talk to the county administrator until such time that we allow that to happen.
No, they have to furnish a letter of credit, and then they can work with the county staff to develop an MOU how to implement that.
I think the
Sure, it was a letter of credit or other surety.
Right, but there's no surety here. They tell them to provide a surety.
Look at the resolution again.
The resolution was to work with, that staff would work within the development MOU that included a revocable letter of credit or other surety. This isn't surety.
But I don't see in here anywhere where it says they won't do that, or they won't.
Well, she said that twice. She said it at the meeting that night. She said,
Well, I heard it. I was talking about the letter, which I think is dated October the 30th. So,
It was also quoted in the Rap News article that they were not able to do that.
well, that's fake news.
Thanks a lot.
I read.
well, without a letter of credit or surety, they haven't complied. What is a surety?
I presume they're just working on it. I thought they want to work on it.
Well, there's nothing to stop them from working on it, but they haven't done it yet, so that's.
I think what they're asking for is permission to work with the county administrator he's our, taxpayers representative. So I think that's what they're asking. I don't see any harm in it.
That would be a reversal of our September vote.
Actually, Curry, do you have copies of that resolution for the meeting tonight?
There wasn't a resolution that the last meeting was a motion. The motion.
We voted on it. in September, I guess.
Right. The resolution that was provided in the packet wasn't adopted, because the resolution in the packet was to move the project forward. The motion was placed on the table as reflected in the minutes. Just reading this letter, it states that they say it makes sense to allow Rap Trails and the county administrator to take a fresh look at the project and develop a strategy that meets the needs of the county. So unless otherwise expressed, the needs of the county would be presumed to align with what the board passed as part of your motion at the September meeting.
That's the way I would read it.
So where are they, what do you just read here?
The last sentence of the last half of the first sentence, the last half of the last sentence of the first paragraph.
Right. Given that order.
You're talking about that, what?
Yes.
It makes sense to allow Rap Trails and County Administrator to take a fresh look at the project and develop a strategy that meets the needs of the county. So, I mean, that being said, since it's on the agenda here, I'll make a motion that we allow Rap Trails and the County Administrator to take a fresh look at the project and develop a strategy that meets the needs of the county. I don't see any harm in that. So I'll put that in the form of a motion.
Point of order. This is just correspondence. And it reverses a motion by the board at a previous meeting.
No,
It does, because that requires to come up with a letter of credit.
Take another step toward the surety. I think what they want to do here is use their own money to do some kind of engineering study to eliminate potential problems so that they can be assured that they're not going to go over budget and that the taxpayer is protected. I mean, this whole thing has always been, from the very beginning, free to the taxpayer.
There's nothing in our last vote that
This will give
precludes
them
that
a
from
chance.
doing it.
This will give them a chance to prove to the best of their ability. They're probably not going to go anywhere, but it's.
Wait a minute, if you could, what precludes them from doing that now with the vote from September 5th?
The only thing is that is the county administrator allowed to spend some of his time working with Rap Trails, is that the name? Rap Trails. That's the only difference.
How can the county administrator help them, or anybody from the county side of the government, help them come up with the surety?
I'm a little fuzzy on that. I think that what they're willing to do is use their own money to do some studies. That's just what I understand.
They can do that.
Yeah, and what about coordinating with the county administrator? I mean, how do you feel about that? If that's okay, then we don't.
I don't understand, really, I mean, I don't understand what they need Mr. Curry for. If they're gonna come up with a strategy all right, if I could back up a minute. This past weekend, we had to set our clocks back at our homes and on our individual wristwatches or whatever, or iPads, take care of yourself, or iPhone. So we had to reset, if you will. So if you follow me, it might take me a few minutes to get my thoughts out here. There's nothing that this board voted on that would preclude them from working on that. So if they want to work on that, then they can continue. But I had a discussion with Marshall Barron. I think most everybody at the table is familiar with Marshall Barron, works for VDOT, and has for a number of years.
And he's the head honcho.
Sir?
He's the head honcho. Marshall Barron is like pretty much the head honcho.
Well, he's up there a little bit. So anyway, the thing is, he said that there's nothing, and my conversation with him, just, and I'm sharing it with the board, he said there's nothing that prevents a private citizen or private group such as Rap Trails of approaching contractors to get some sort of an idea of cost estimates on a project, and just like this one. So they could do that, and they could spend the money that they have on engineering work if they want to. They hired Bowler, and they could go forward with Bowler to get a firm cost of what it may be that they present back to this board. There's nothing that this board did that precludes them from doing any further work. What this board voted on, and what the citizens were demanding that night, that at least the bulk of the citizens in the public hearing, or the public meeting that we had, it wasn't a public hearing, but and through phone calls and and emails that I received, and I'm sure that y'all received quite a few, I believe the majority of the county just doesn't want the financial responsibility.
No, right, right.
So the board said, show us that you've got the wherewithal.
Right,
And this doesn't change.
that's what they're still trying to do.
Well, they can still do it. This board just need to do one thing to prevent them from getting better cost estimates from an engineering firm or firm cost estimates from different contracting firms.
Right. Did that motion preclude them from communicating with the county administrator?
It doesn't preclude them, but there's no point in them talking to them if they don't come up with sure.
If that's the case, then we don't need this letter.
Do you want me to read the motion?
If you would, yeah.
Of course, it was amended at the end. So Mr. Fraser amended his motion to instruct staff to work with Rapp Trails, including the county attorney and Rapp Trails attorney, to develop an MOU that includes an irrevocable letter of credit or other such means to act as a surety to cover any cost overruns that are associated with design, construction, and maintenance for the school connected trail.
So,
That's covered. That's covered.
right?
So what I've explained to Ms. Whitfield is that for me to invest my time, I needed to understand how their work fit into that direction from the board.
Well, it says, the motion to instruct staff to work with Rapp Trails, including the county attorney and Rapp Trails attorney, to develop an MOU that includes letter of credit or other such means. Yeah, really, so this is redundant. You've already got it. They've already got what they're asking for.
But Mr. Curry is asking the board, right? Mr. Curry, you're saying you're asking the board for some kind of direction from us. Are you or are you not?
No, so,
I missed that.
and what I've also told the board, and I told Ms. Whitfield, is that if their organization is unable, for whatever reason, to obtain a letter of credit for design, construction, maintenance, then they express that to the board, and then if they want to recommend some alternative path, then they can explain what that might be. I don't know if that's the genesis of this letter. I don't think the letter actually says that.
Well, what they've done in the meantime is go out and raise a bunch more money.
Yeah.
So they haven't been dormant.
That's fine.
Yeah, that's good. That's.
I mean, they
that's
can
what
spend
need
it
to
on, they can spend it on any trail. They're certainly welcome to raise funds at any time.
do. Right.
Well, they may have some restrictions on some donor restrictions, I don't know.
Well, I think a lot of the donations are tied to this particular school.
I'm not opposed to working with the group. I just want there to be a reasonable end to the discussion. There's already been significant criticism for the amount of time staff's spent on it, and I have marching orders from the majority of the board by that last motion, so.
Well, here it is, right in item 7 in Ms. Whitfield's letter. On September 5th, 2018, a public hearing was held to consider the same documents as presented at the September meeting. At that time, the supervisors tabled the document approval and passed a motion to request Rapp Trails to work with staff on developing a letter of credit or other surety to cover all trail expenses and maintenance for the trail's life. Rapp Trails has previously stated that we are not able to provide such a letter of credit or surety.
So
So there's none forthcoming.
they're not going to comply. And this really is a misconstrued. It was to work with a MOU that included a letter of credit. But be that as it means, as it may, the end result is that their last sentence of paragraph 7 is Rapp Trails has previously stated that we are unable to provide such a letter of credit or surety. So they don't want to provide a letter of credit or surety that takes the risk off the taxpayer. And this is a very important issue because we don't have much staff. And we're going to overburden our staff to a point where we're going to be back to where we were possibly a year or so ago, where we have more things happening than we have staff to keep up with. And I don't want to see that happen again. This trail has been very divisive, so I think we need to, we can conclude this discussion tonight, and there's more people present that are coming out for this, but I see no reason to move anything based on this letter right now. It's just correspondence.
Well, I wish we were having this conversation in front of more people.
Well, we
That's
can
why
bring it back up.
It's not.
It's correspondence, and they're saying that they don't want to comply with the last vote of this board. So we'll have that tonight. Sentiment may change.
What's that?
Sentiment may change, I doubt it. The sentiment may change.
So, Mr. Parrish, are you withdrawing your motion, or is it time for?
Well, it sounds like,
Can you repeat the motion?
well, the motion was,
Because I think it may be
Just-
moved.
yeah. Right here. Right here. Allow rat trails and county administrator to take a fresh look at the project and develop a strategy that meets the needs of the county. Yeah, I'll leave that in form of a motion. I don't, as we have already just talked about, it's the same thing, it's, the motion's already made, so it's redundant, but yeah, I don't mind putting that out in the form of a motion.
It's already happening now, right?
Looks like it.
It's hard. I'll second.
This is a reversal of our vote in September, and if it is that, then it should
it's
have been put on the
it's
agenda.
the exact same
Excuse
thing.
me, Mr. Parrish, I didn't interrupt you when you were speaking.
Thank you.
If it is that, then it should have been added to the agenda by a member of this board that voted to require the letter of credit. It wasn't. It was introduced to this agenda as a correspondence item, and so it should not be acted on by this board at this time.
Well, I did vote for that.
You can't make the agenda now. It won't carry. I mean, you're welcome to try, but I suggest to you that it will not carry.
Why not?
I think it's important that we get to the root of the Chapter 30 issue, because it could affect the resolution tonight.
Right.
And if the resolution tonight is suggested to be reversing the course of the earlier meeting, then somebody voted in the affirmative, and so that
Everybody but.
would have to make the motion to pass it. But the Chapter 30 doesn't speak to who can add items to the agenda, it's only who can move action.
Right, but this is now becoming an action item. That's what I was talking about earlier today.
Then that would restrict who can move action. I really want to make sure that we're straight on how this Chapter 30 affects what gets on the agenda.
This item is becoming an action item. It's a reversal of our previous vote.
And that
And it was added by a public citizen, not by one of the board members. That's what's happening.
I really think we should do it as Bilzinski suggested and table this to the later meeting. Or take it up at the later meeting.
In the future, when items are placed on the agenda, the process for that is that I prepare a preliminary agenda and provide it to the chair for it to go forward to the board.
Exactly.
But I'm not a member of the board. All of these items on the agenda I put on there, there's only one that the board never sent me. So I don't want to get hung up with that.
But by you placing this on the agenda, it becomes a possible action item, which would be reversing an earlier decision by this board, which is covered by Chapter 30.
Which means the only way it could reverse the action from the previous meeting is if somebody who voted in the majority moved it. And that is relative to the action, not relative to whether it can be on the agenda.
Again, this is what this was like a gentleman's agreement for 20 years or more that I was on the board. And before that, John, but it just wasn't in writing, that in order to keep from continually bringing something back month after month after month, it would have to be added to the agenda. Let's say if it was a 3-2, then it would have to be at least one of the members that voted in the 3, the majority, so that when it came back, it could possibly be reversed by the now new majority.
Yeah.
But what we did here, when you add something, when you added it as the county clerk of the board, then it became a possible action item without going through that process.
And I would suggest to you the gate there is adoption of the agenda by a majority of the board at the beginning of the meeting.
And we made this a correspondence issue instead of an action item.
and I guess you changed it, but I would suggest that because it went through the process and the preliminary agenda and reviewed by the chair and was presented, it was on the agenda properly, and you decided to change where it was on the agenda, and that's fine, and the board is empowered to do that, but I want to be clear going forward that items such as this, that I place on the agenda, preliminary agenda to be reviewed by the chair and ultimately presented to the full board at the adoption of the agenda, are valid agenda.
They would be. But I think this is because we're still trying to get through this addition from July of the change in chapter 30. I thought it was clear what our intention was, that when the board has taken a step, when you bring it back for reconsideration, it would have to be added to the agenda by one of those members. It doesn't state in our Rules 30 whether it was at that meeting or any subsequent meeting. It just says something that's already been voted on. And we were trying to be clear there. I mean, the county attorney worked on it too, and I thought that we all were clear on it, that if it's something that comes back, that's how it's addressed. Because we certainly can address something in a meeting, just add it back to the agenda or reverse a vote or whatever.
Just so I'm perfectly clear going forward, if there's a matter that's been previously voted on by the board, I'm not to place it on the agenda unless one of the board members in the majority of the preceding vote specifically requests it be on the agenda.
That's my understanding of that, yes. Because if not, then we continually bring back something that may be 4-1, 4-1, 4-1.
Only if it's supported by a majority of the board at the beginning of the meeting, which if it was 4-1, 4-1, the one could never get it through the majority of the board at the beginning of the meeting.
I mean, you can add what you like to your update and to correspondence, but in terms of actionable items, that was my understanding.
But we made this a correspondence issue, not an action item.
That was just a housekeeping move.
It was. It still is. If you want to discuss it as part of tonight's, you're making a decision. You already said that you didn't like doing this in front of a few people. Just do it tonight in front of a bunch of people.
Well, I mean, it's not going to change.
It does change the person to vote because
It's fine, Chris.
the MOU that they're authorized to discuss now includes some sort of surety. Without surety, then this overturns that vote.
So, I mean, whether we do anything this afternoon or tonight, I mean, it's not going to change it.
Yes, it does.
That's what you're saying.
No, you're saying.
So you're saying tonight, it's an action item, this afternoon it's not?
It can be, well, tonight, there's a resolution that is an action item, and we can discuss this and those points that you just brought up as part of that. But right now, it's a correspondence issue. That's what it really is. And if you try to take action on a correspondence issue, for one, it doesn't look good. But second, your motion overturns the earlier vote without the public being present.
I mean, the public is, yeah.
Well,
The,
5 people.
yeah, well, that's the public, and then the, as I mentioned earlier, my motion really is pretty much the same as what our resolution was, or our motion was at the meeting.
No, it's not. You're changing it. You're allowing Rapp Trails to tie up a county administrator's time without doing the surety.
Well, let's take a fresh look at the project and demonstrate that it meets the needs of the county. Yeah. I don't know, so is this, are we illegal? We've got a motion in a second, are we illegal to go on with it, or?
Does meets the needs of the county, is that deemed to be consistent with the motion that you passed in September, meaning that the needs of the county include an MOU that it considers a letter of credit? I mean, I'm sure that I can do that. I don't think there's anything illegal.
I mean, they said they can't do it, but who's to say that won't change at some point, really?
And how long would you let this continue in your district, Mr. Wazinski?
How long would I let it continue? Well, I'll tell you what, there's a lot of people that have spent a lot of time and effort on this to try to make it a reality, and I think no is the easiest language, easiest word in the English language. We can always say no. We can say no tonight. We can approve your resolution and say no tonight. These people are still working very diligently to raise more money in the last 30 days.
And nothing we do today or tonight will change it.
Well, maybe they are working towards this, surely. I'd love to hear from them tonight, one way or the other.
If the board does approve the resolution on the agenda tonight, I think it would definitely change. I mean, Rap Trails can raise all the money they want, they'd have to raise the full project and then get a grant.
Yeah, I mean-
The grant would be, the 800,000 would be gone.
Well, the rest of
If
this,
we
we
look
don't
at that
discuss
resolution
it.
tonight, this would.
Well, but you're saying it's nothing we do now or tonight would change Rap Trail's ability to raise more
On
money
that
over time. It drastically impacts, 80% of the project budget. So
No, the thing is, we're already a year into this. We're already a year into it, and it hasn't moved forward. All it's done is cause more controversy. There's probably more unknowns now than there were then, because we've actually elaborated on what some of those unknowns are. A year ago, we didn't even know what the unknowns were. So as we become educated, we find out that there's much more we don't know. Am I making myself clear without trying to sound like Donald Rumsfeld? The thing is, whatever we do tonight isn't going to change the fact that they can continue working on this project.
Well, it's not illegal. I made a motion and Mr. Lisinski seconded it. I don't see why we can't vote on it.
What is the motion?
The motion is allow the Rap Trails and the county administrator to take a fresh look at the project and develop a strategy that meets the needs of the county.
Without a letter of credit or surety.
If it meets the needs of the county, if it's taxpayers protected, we, in the end, we still have the right to squash it at any time in the future. This is just giving them another opportunity to figure out a way to finish the project and protect the taxpayer. That's the way I look at it.
They've had that. They've had it for 2 months.
Well, that's obviously what I'm saying. They raised a bunch of money in the recent.
Unfortunately, your motion leaves a whole lot to be desired there. What is the best interest of the county?
I think meets the needs of the county is a very,
Well, that's what we decide when the time comes. We decide.
well, we
They
can't do work
propose something
based
in
on
the future.
something we haven't decided yet.
Well, I didn't interrupt you. We give them the opportunity to prove themselves. If we're not satisfied with what they come up with, then we vote it down at that point.
They've had 2 months.
What? 2 months is not much time when you're talking about this kind of money.
How much money are we talking about?
How much money are we talking about?
We were talking about giving $800,000 back to VDOT.
No, we haven't talked about that yet. That's not on the agenda.
You asked about, Ron, you asked the question, how much money are we talking about?
I'm right.
To answer your question.
You guys are trying to, actually,
Well, let me answer
you're
the
trying to
question.
argue, Mr. Chairman, point of order, they're trying to argue the resolution right now, and that's on the agenda for 7 p.m. at the high school.
Well, what's going to move it?
Well, anyway, I made a motion, Mr. Lisinski seconded it. If there's nothing illegal about it, I would like to go ahead and vote on it.
Could you state that again, and we have it in writing so that he has no misunderstandings?
So do I understand is the last part of the first paragraph?
Yeah, allow Rap Trails and the county administrator to take a fresh look at the project and develop a strategy that meets the needs of the county. We always have the opportunity in the future to squash it whenever we want to. This is just giving them a chance to continue doing some more work to prove to us that this is the best thing.
But
And if we don't like it, then we kill it.
this, you do understand this is a county project.
Yeah. Yep. We
So what would we do?
We can kill this at any time in the future if they don't prove these things.
Would we do this, let's say courthouse modifications or remodel? Would we do this, have the same action with a project like that, a county project?
It's all different.
No, it's not. This is a county public works project that we are responsible for. Rap Trails is not included in the agreement with VDOT, and it specifically states that it doesn't extend.
They're going to prove to us that we're covered. If they don't, we kill it.
They've had 2 months to do that, and they say they're not going to do it.
2 months is not enough time.
They say they're not going to do
Well,
it.
if they don't do it, then we kill it. If they don't do it, we kill it.
But they've already said
We're
it.
not gambling.
They
We're not
say
gambling.
that in this letter, Mr. Parrish, they say it in this letter to the board, they're not going to
It's
do it.
number 7 on their list of things in the letter.
Why are you prolonging the agony when they say they're not going to do it? You're going to give them another chance to do something they've already said they're not going to do 3 times. Publicly. 3 times they said they're not going to do it.
They said the letter of credit. And they may in the end do it, if they don't have any other choice.
Mr. Parrish, they've already said it 3 times. I don't know why we keep belaboring it.
Well, I don't know why we would want to kill a project so early when the money.
We're not killing the
The
project.
money from the State Department, Highway Department was what? Until June 1st or something like that?
I don't know.
30 years will be.
June 30th? I don't see what the rush is.
Well, there's a lot of dissatisfaction in my
Mr. Chairman,
district.
point of order, that needs to be discussed tonight, because that agenda item is on for tonight.
It's been moved to now.
No, just this letter is on now. The resolution and the discussion for the public is on for 7 PM, and we are undermining the public will if we decide something right now. You're discussing this resolution, Mr. Parrish has discussed it, Mr. Lisinski has discussed it, and it is not on the agenda until 7 PM tonight at another location.
We moved it to M1, M2.
Just the
No,
letter.
all we moved was the letter, discussion of the letter. The motion is out of order, Mr. Chairman.
Well, the letter has a request in it.
I don't think that.
But that motion is out of order at this point on the agenda.
I would agree, you cannot take action on the resolution that is on the agenda T1.
Right, but they keep referring to the resolution as if they're doing something now with the resolution, and the resolution is on later at a different time and a different location, Mr. Chairman. I believe this motion is out of order because of what they're doing and what y'all are saying. If you want to discuss that, fine, at 7 PM.
And just from a parliamentary standpoint, if the board were to take action right now to allow Rapp Trails and the county administrator to take a fresh look at the project and develop a strategy that meets the needs of the county, that would be a short-lived look if at 7 o'clock the board then votes to approve the resolution, because then the funding would be, so
Right.
it would basically be 5:25 to 7 o'clock.
Does that mean that the members won't try and use the vote now to undermine the resolution tonight, saying that it's a moot point?
There's 2 separate things.
I'm not,
I'm sorry?
I can't interpret what the board may do or not.
I'm sorry, Mr. Parrish?
I said they're 2 separate things.
So then we're still on to do the resolution, to discuss that in front of the public at a different location at 7 PM.
Right. You're the one that changed the agenda.
No, I didn't change an action item, I changed a letter of correspondence.
We wouldn't have gone down this trail if we'd been talking about, that's a bad word. We wouldn't have been down this road if we hadn't moved these letters to this point.
A letter is not an action item. It doesn't comply with the earlier vote of this board. And y'all are trying to change an earlier vote of this board based on a letter, and the letter says that they're not going to comply with an earlier vote of this board.
Well, then you'll say the same thing tonight if this letter comes up again tonight. It's the same, applies the same at 7 o'clock as it does at 2 o'clock, doesn't it? Is that reasoning?
The public would be here that are concerned about this matter. The public's not here because they did not expect this vote.
I get that. Trust me, I've already made that point. But it's a.
But you made
it's a matter of the board.
a second to a motion.
There's nothing in.
Yeah, I did. Because it sounds like we're considering it now.
We could have done it for lack of a second.
The motion was seconded by Lisinski.
Any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Yay.
I vote aye. Now we go to the report.
Yes. Put in your packet is the building permit report. Also included in your packet is the zoning administrator report and the monthly report. Agenda items N1, 2, and 3. Happy to answer any questions if you have. Preparing the preliminary agenda, I included an item for closed meeting. Believing that the board wanted to have a closed meeting for employee performance evaluations. I do have a motion prepared for you if you would like to go into closed meeting for that purpose.
So we have all gotten the form and filled out the forms, and we're going to turn them into the chairman. So is it really necessary to go into closed session? The chairman can...
We had a discussion about also reviewing the strengths and possible weaknesses that we thought were the key items of our reports together as well. So I would prefer that we do it
now rather than after the chairman compiles the results.
I just hate to put it off. I mean, this was part of Gary's contract that we were to have it to him. Was it June, Gary? So,
Unless we're going to have a continued meeting because of time.
I would prefer to have another meeting later this week due to time constraints, one evening when everyone's free.
For the performance? You mean for the closed session?
For the closed session.
I think that would be best. I think that we determined that we were going to compile this, let the chairman compile whatever, but we were going to talk about the strengths and weaknesses if there's any. And I think that we need to do that. But time is getting away from us for a night meeting.
And this is important. I don't want to do it hastily.
I guess if we can add to the agenda for later tonight, we'll do a continued meeting. We'll work for the other board members. I'll make a motion.
Well, if that's what you want to do, rather than adjourning the meeting, you would continue it to a date, time, and place certain.
Right, I think but we need to know what that is.
But that action will be taken tonight, so.
Right. So we all look at the calendars and see what would work.
Can't do anything this week except Friday.
I'm going to do it this week, Wednesday night's the only night.
Your Wednesday and your Friday.
How about next week?
That also,
Wednesday is the businesses are out of networking events.
all right.
You the only one?
You could, and I don't know your day schedule, but you could potentially do it in the days. This is not going to be public to open and closed.
I don't see any real harm in waiting until the December meeting to do this. Couple more weeks.
We could do it early. We could do like a 9 o'clock meeting one day this week if that worked for somebody.
Okay.
Well, tomorrow's election day, and then the 13th. I mean, the 13th is the first business day next week. I couldn't do a 9 on Thursday, but I could do a 9 on the other night.
Do a 9 on Friday and 9.
That should work for me.
I can do it, man, but I wouldn't like
I
to.
don't want to say deliveries. So back up, let me check the weather forecast.
Okay.
If it's raining,
It's supposed to rain on Friday.
And it's snow on Saturday. That's what you're saying.
Well, yeah. So.
Friday, 9 on that?
Yeah, it says rain. Okay, I can do it. And then,
Mr. Chair?
Sir?
I can make a motion at the 7 o'clock meeting to recess until Friday at 9.
At
Friday, the 9th at 9.
location.
Oh, what do we got?
Why don't we do the county offices? Unless you all want to do it here.
I can't do it in the visitor center.
Yeah, it's not good.
Friday's open.
Oh, okay. Well, then we'll do it here.
Is this available for everyone?
Library? I have no idea. Library's not very private.
No.
What about upstairs in the conference room? It's tight.
We can hope that that's available
The conference room,
at the extension.
yeah.
Do we have to state the location when the motion is made?
You should.
So the public will know.
We probably can't find out about that.
Try to. Everybody's gone at this point.
There's no place that we absolutely control.
We can meet in the gingerbread house.
We could do that. Definitely have control of that.
Yeah, why don't we just meet there? You can give us a chance to look at it. You're talking about the old county administrator's
Yes.
office? Just meet there.
Is there a table there?
I will make chairs and a table.
I think that's very appropriate. We need to check that place out.
Kill two birds with one stone.
9 o'clock at the old county admin building.
There you go.
Yeah.
I knew we needed that building.
Yeah,
I believe that's 290 Gay Street.
290 Gay Street. All right.
All right, so tonight, rather than adjourning, you will
Recess today. Okay,
Thank
so
you.
now we, motion for recess, I move.
you don't need a motion, the chair is empowered to recess the meeting.
Recess,
Till 7.
till 7
At the house.
a.m.
Okay.
Okay. How do we discuss board on?
So this COIA thing,
How do we
the state transaction was approving the 2 bills in the AP for Walker Jones. That your personal interest is that your, litigant,
Kind of.
plaintiff.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Not over there.
So,
Derek, do I still need to be going?
We're done until the high school.